Frost never believed in half measures. As the son of a military commander who'd survived 3 tours in Afghanistan, he had learned early that life rewarded decisive action and punished hesitation. By 35, he had transformed himself from a scrappy kid from Buffalo into the owner of a thriving private security firm with contracts across 5 states. "You're working late again." Vanessa's voice drifted into his home office, where spreadsheets glowed on his monitor. Even after 11 years of marriage, the sound of her voice still triggered something in him, a warmth he allowed himself only with her and their daughter. "Just finishing up the Bridgeport contract," he replied, pushing away from his desk. "How was Olivia's recital?" "She missed you." The words landed like small stones. Dominic's jaw tightened. "I told her I'd make it up to her this weekend." "Like you did last weekend? And the one before?" Vanessa leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed over her chest. At 33, she still turned heads, honey blonde hair framing eyes the color of bourbon. They had met during his darkest period, when the security company was just a desperate dream and debt collectors called day and night. "That's not fair." He stood, towering over her slight frame. "Who do you think pays for those dance lessons? The private school tuition? This house. A house means nothing if it's not a home, Dom." It was an old argument, one that had been appearing with increasing frequency over the past year. Dominic had noticed the pattern, how Vanessa seemed to pick fights before her girls' nights out or her weekend yoga retreats. At first, he'd written it off as normal marital tension. But lately, a nagging suspicion had taken root in his mind. "Where's Liv now?" he asked, changing the subject. "Asleep. She wanted to show you her trophy." Guilt stabbed at him. "I'll be there for her next one. I promise." Vanessa's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then quickly tucked it away. "Another emergency at the gallery?" Dominic asked, unable to keep the edge from his voice. "Just Mona confirming our lunch tomorrow." She kissed his cheek, a gesture that felt perfunctory. "Don't stay up too late." After she left, Dominic returned to his computer, but found himself staring at the family photo on his desk, taken 3 years ago on a rare vacation to Monterey. Olivia, then 5, her dark curls wild in the ocean breeze, sat perched on his shoulders. Vanessa leaned against him, laughing at something he'd said. They looked happy. They were happy, weren't they? He closed the spreadsheet and opened his browser. The tracking app he'd installed on Vanessa's phone showed her in their bedroom, presumably getting ready for bed. He told himself it was just a precaution, the kind of security measure anyone in his position would take. He hadn't actually used it to track her movements. Not yet. The next morning began like any other. Dominic woke early, went for his 5-mile run, and returned to find Olivia in the kitchen, humming as she arranged cereal into patterns in her bowl. "Daddy." She launched herself at him, and he caught her, swinging her up into his arms. "I got a trophy. It's shaped like a star." "That's my girl," he said, pressing his forehead to hers. "I knew you'd be the best one. Miss Kellerman said I had natural rhythm." She pronounced the words carefully, clearly repeating something she'd heard. "Well, Miss Kellerman is very smart." Vanessa appeared in the doorway, already dressed for her day at the art gallery she managed. "Don't get her all wound up before school, Dom." "Heaven forbid she be excited in the morning," he replied, setting Olivia down. Their daughter looked between them, sensing the tension. "I'm going to get my backpack," she announced, slipping away. "Your mother called," Vanessa said once Olivia was gone. "She wants us to come for dinner on Sunday. It's your father-in-law's birthday." Dominic suppressed a groan. Dorothy Milligan had made it clear from day one that she thought her daughter had married beneath her. Thomas Milligan, a retired judge, was marginally more tolerable, though he never missed an opportunity to remind Dominic of his humble beginnings. "I have to check my schedule." "It's family, Dom, make time." He studied his wife's face, noting the careful application of makeup, the designer blouse she'd chosen. "You look nice. Special client coming in today." Something flickered across her expression. Just the usual crowd. Before he could press further, Olivia returned, backpack slung over one shoulder in a posture that mimicked her mother's. "Ready?" Dominic kissed the top of her head. "Have a great day, kiddo. I want to hear all about that trophy tonight." After they left, he showered and dressed for his own day. As he knotted his tie, his phone rang. "Boss, we've got a situation at the Hamilton site." It was Boyd, his operations manager. 3 guards didn't show, and the client's pitching a fit. "I'll be there in 20, Dominic replied, already calculating which meetings he could reschedule. As he headed for the door, he paused at Vanessa's desk in the kitchen nook. A stack of mail sat unopened. He rifled through it: bills, advertisements, a postcard from her sister in Phoenix. Nothing suspicious. He was being paranoid. Vanessa was busy, distant maybe, but that didn't mean she was unfaithful. They'd built a life together, created a child together. She wouldn't throw that away, would she? The question followed him as he drove to the office, lingering like smoke. Chapter 2. Cracks in the facade. The Hamilton situation took most of the day to resolve. By the time Dominic returned home, darkness had settled over their suburban neighborhood, porch lights glowing like beacons. He found Vanessa in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with precise, aggressive strokes. "Rough day?" he asked, loosening his tie. "Your daughter is impossible sometimes," she replied without looking up. She refused to finish her math homework and locked herself in her room. "She's 8, Van. Not exactly hardened criminal material. This isn't a joke. Her teacher called. She's falling behind." Dominic frowned. She's never had trouble with school before. Maybe she would have better focus if her father was around more. The accusation stung, especially given how hard he worked to provide for them. "Where is she now?" "Still in her room. She said she'll only talk to you." He found Olivia lying on her bed, staring at the ceiling where glow-in-the-dark stars formed constellations he'd helped her arrange. Her dark curls, so like his own, splayed across the pillow. "Hey, Space Cadet," he said, sitting on the edge of her bed. "Heard you're organizing a rebellion against mathematics." She didn't smile. "I hate it here. I want to go live with Uncle Leo." Leo was Dominic's closest friend from his army days, a surrogate uncle who spoiled Olivia shamelessly. "That's pretty extreme. What's going on, Liv?" "Mom's always sad or mad. You're never here. And when you are here, you fight." Her perception cut him to the quick. Children noticed more than adults gave them credit for. "Your mom and I are just busy with work. That doesn't mean we don't love you. Or each other." She sat up, her expression too serious for a child. Tyler Miller's parents got divorced, and now he has 2 bedrooms and a stepmom who lets him eat ice cream for breakfast. "Is that what this is about? You want double the bedrooms and morning ice cream?" She shook her head. "I want everyone to stop pretending everything's okay when it's not." Dominic swallowed hard. "Look, every family has rough patches. But nothing's going to change the fact that you're stuck with me and your mom, kiddo. We're family, and that's forever. Promise." Her voice was small. "I promise," he said, though something cold settled in his stomach. "Now, how about I help you with that math homework?" An hour later, math problems solved and Olivia tucked in, Dominic found Vanessa in the living room, wine glass in hand as she scrolled through her phone. "She's asleep," he said, pouring himself a whiskey. "Want to tell me what's really going on?" Vanessa set her phone down. "What do you mean?" "Olivia thinks we're heading for divorce." She sighed. "Kids are dramatic. She'll be fine." "Will she?" "Because I'm not sure we're fine, Van." His wife's gaze dropped to her wine. "We're just busy. Ships passing in the night." "Is that all it is?" Something in his tone made her look up sharply. "What are you implying?" He hesitated, then decided to test the waters. "You've been distant. Secretive with your phone. Coming home late from work events smelling like cologne that isn't mine. You're tracking me? Smelling me." Her voice rose. "Do you hear yourself? This is exactly why I need space sometimes. You treat our marriage like one of your security operations. I'm just stating facts." "Here's a fact for you," she snapped. "I've spent the past year watching you choose work over your family at every turn. And now you have the nerve to accuse me of what? Having an affair? Are you? Screw you, Dominic." She stood, hands shaking. "I'm going to bed. Alone. Since that seems to be how you prefer things anyway." He let her go, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. Either she was genuinely hurt by his suspicions, or she was an exceptional actress. The problem was that Dominic had seen too many people lie convincingly in his line of work to trust his judgment when it came to his own wife. Tomorrow was Sunday, dinner at the Milligans. Perhaps it was time to pay closer attention to the dynamics at play in his extended family. Dorothy had never approved of him, but lately, he'd noticed her watching Vanessa with an expression that bordered on concern. Did she know something he didn't? The Milligan estate sat on 2 manicured acres in a neighborhood where old money whispered rather than shouted. Thomas greeted them at the door, his handshake firm despite his 70 years. "The birthday boy himself," Dominic said, handing over a wrapped bottle of 25-year-old scotch. Many happy returns, Tom. Always know how to pick him, don't you, son? Thomas clapped him on the shoulder. Come in, come in. Dorothy's just finishing up in the kitchen. Vanessa kissed her father's cheek. Happy birthday, Dad. Where are Brad and the kids? In the backyard. Those boys of his are hellions. Thomas chuckled, referring to Vanessa's brother and his twin sons. Olivia tugged at Dominic's hand. Can I go play with Kyle and Connor? Sure, kiddo. Just be careful. Those cousins of yours are wild. As she raced off, Dominic caught a glimpse of Dorothy in the dining room, setting out crystal glasses. She looked up, her smile tightening when she saw him. Dominic, how nice you could join us. Wouldn't miss it, Dorothy. He matched her cool tone. Need any help? I think we can manage. She turned to her daughter. Vanessa, be a dear and bring out the appetizer tray. Dominic followed his wife into the kitchen, watching as she expertly arranged crostini on a silver platter. Your mother's in rare form today. It's Dad's birthday. She wants everything perfect. When doesn't she? Vanessa shot him a warning look. Please, Dom. Not today. He held up his hands in surrender. I'll be on my best behavior. The rest of the family soon gathered in the living room. Brad, Vanessa's older brother, was a partner at a prestigious law firm, a fact he managed to work into every conversation. His wife, Stephanie, was a pediatrician who clearly found her husband's bravado as tiresome as Dominic did. Their 9-year-old twins had inherited their father's robust build and competitive nature. As wine flowed and conversations overlapped, Dominic observed the family dynamics with a detached interest. Dorothy fussed over Brad's family while largely ignoring Olivia. Thomas occasionally glanced at his phone, especially when conversation lagged. Vanessa laughed too loudly at her brother's jokes and refilled her wine glass more frequently than usual. When dinner was served, prime rib cooked to perfection, Dorothy directed everyone to their seats. Dominic noticed immediately that while small wrapped packages sat beside each plate, Olivia's setting was conspicuously bare. What are these? Vanessa asked, picking up the small box at her place. Just a little something for everyone, Dorothy replied, beaming. Open them. Kyle and Connor tore into theirs first, revealing matching silver pocket knives engraved with their initials. Cool. Thanks, Grandma, they chorused. Brad and Stephanie received monogrammed cocktail shakers. Thomas got a vintage pocket watch. Vanessa unwrapped a delicate sapphire bracelet that matched her eyes. Throughout the gift-giving, Olivia sat quietly, her expression falling as she realized she was the only one without a present. Dominic felt his jaw tighten as he watched his daughter try to hide her hurt. Mom, Vanessa said, her voice strained. I think you forgot Olivia. Dorothy's smile didn't waver. Oh, did I? Must have slipped my mind. The deliberate cruelty of the statement hung in the air. Dominic was about to speak when Thomas broke the silence. Dorothy, surely you have something for our granddaughter. Dorothy took a sip of wine. These are family heirlooms, Thomas. For blood relatives. Mom, Vanessa gasped. Dominic froze, his hand tightening around his fork. What exactly are you implying, Dorothy? I'm not implying anything, dear. Dorothy's eyes were cold as she looked at Olivia. She's not really family, is she? Not in the way that matters. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. Dominic saw her small hands clench in her lap as she fought to maintain composure. That's enough, Vanessa said, standing. Olivia, sweetie, let's go. No. Dominic interrupted, his voice deadly calm. I'd like Dorothy to explain what she means. But his mother-in-law merely turned her attention to her plate, cutting a piece of meat. I think we all know what I mean. Now, shall we enjoy this lovely dinner before it gets cold? Dominic looked at his daughter, who was blinking back tears, then at his wife, whose face had gone white. In that moment, something fundamental shifted inside him. He'd always known Dorothy disapproved of him, but this attack on Olivia crossed a line he couldn't ignore. Liv, he said gently, why don't you go show your cousins that new game on your tablet? The adults need to talk. Once the children had left the room, Dominic turned to his mother-in-law. I don't know what game you're playing, Dorothy, but you don't speak to my daughter that way. Ever. Your daughter. Dorothy arched an eyebrow. Are you certain about that? The implication hit him like a physical blow. He looked at Vanessa, expecting outrage or denial. Instead, he saw guilt flash across her face before she composed herself. Mom, stop it, she said weakly. This isn't the time or place. When is the time, then? Dorothy pressed. The poor man deserves to know, doesn't he? Thomas placed a hand on his wife's arm. Dorothy, that's enough. But the damage was done. Dominic stood, his chair scraping harshly against the hardwood floor. We're leaving. Now. The drive home was silent, Olivia dozing in the back seat, emotionally exhausted. Vanessa stared out the passenger window, her profile illuminated by passing streetlights. Is she mine? Dominic finally asked, his voice barely audible. Vanessa turned to him, eyes glistening. Dom, please. Answer the question, Vanessa. Is Olivia my biological daughter? The silence stretched between them. Answer enough. Who? He asked, knuckles white on the steering wheel. It doesn't matter. It was before we were serious. A mistake. 8 years, Van. 8 years, and you never told me. Because I knew you'd react like this. You'd see her differently. He pulled into their driveway, killed the engine. I'm her father in every way that counts. That hasn't changed. He turned to look at his sleeping daughter in the rearview mirror. But you and I? We're done. Dom, you can't mean that. Your mother just publicly humiliated our child to get at me. And you sat there and said nothing. I told her to stop. Not good enough. His voice was ice. Not nearly good enough. That night, after putting Olivia to bed, Dominic made up the couch for himself. As he lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, he heard Vanessa moving around upstairs. Drawers opening and closing. The soft sound of crying. He felt nothing. The man who had walked into that dinner was gone. In his place was someone colder, more calculating. Someone who would protect what was his and destroy anything, or anyone, who threatened it. Starting with the people who had betrayed him. Chapter 3. The Document. Monday morning arrived with a clarity Dominic hadn't experienced in years. As he dressed for work, selecting his sharpest suit and power tie, he mentally cataloged what he knew and what he still needed to learn. Olivia wasn't his biological child. Vanessa had lied to him for 8 years. And based on Dorothy's calculated cruelty, others knew this secret before he did. He dropped Olivia at school, as usual, careful to maintain her routine despite the earthquake reshaping his life. Her hug at drop-off lingered, as if she sensed the change in him. I love you, Daddy, she whispered. More than anything in this world. He replied, meaning it with every atom of his being. Biology be damned, she was his. At his office, he closed the door and called Leo Adams. If anyone could help him navigate the treacherous waters ahead, it was his former squad mate. Dom, my man, to what do I owe the pleasure? Leo's voice boomed through the speaker. I need your help, brother. Off the books. The jovial tone vanished. What's going on? Dominic explained everything. The dinner, Dorothy's revelation, Vanessa's confirmation. Jesus Christ, Leo muttered. What can I do? I need information. About Vanessa, about who Olivia's biological father might be. And I need it quietly. You know I've got your 6. Always have, always will. Leo paused. What about Vanessa? You confronting her? Not yet. I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with first. After hanging up, Dominic accessed the security system he'd installed in their home. Vanessa should be at the gallery by now, giving him privacy to begin his investigation. He opened his laptop and navigated to their bank records, reviewing statements from the past year. Nothing immediately suspicious stood out. Their joint accounts showed the expected patterns. Mortgage payments, utilities, Olivia's school tuition, Vanessa's modest gallery salary deposits. He switched to credit card statements, scanning line by line. There, a pattern of charges at a hotel downtown, always on Wednesdays when she claimed to have late gallery events. Never large amounts, just bar tabs and parking fees. But the regularity was damning. Next, he turned to her email. Years ago, when setting up their home network, he'd created a backup system that archived all messages. A privacy invasion he'd justified as a security measure. Now, he was grimly grateful for his paranoia. Most of her correspondence was mundane. Work communications, PDA notices, online shopping confirmations. But in a folder labeled Personal Projects, he found what he was looking for. Exchanges with someone identified only as G. The messages were carefully worded, never explicitly romantic, but the subtext was clear. References to our Wednesday meetings and that thing you promised to show me next time. The most recent email, from just 3 days ago, mentioned big changes coming soon and finally being honest. Dominic's phone buzzed with a text from Leo. Found something. Pulling into your parking lot now. Minutes later, Leo strode into the office, his imposing frame filling the doorway. At 6'4" with shoulders like a linebacker, Leo had been the physically strongest member of their unit. Now he ran a private investigation firm that frequently collaborated with Dominic's security company. That was fast, Dominic said, standing to grip his friend's hand. I've had suspicions about Vanessa for a while, Leo admitted, sliding into a chair. Didn't want to say anything without proof. What kind of suspicions? Leo pulled out his phone, opened a photo. This was taken 2 months ago. Wasn't looking for it specifically. I was surveilling a target at the Archer Hotel for another client. The image showed Vanessa in the hotel lobby, arm linked with a tall man whose face was partially obscured. They were standing closer than casual acquaintances would. Who is he? Garrett Nelson. Art dealer. Specializes in emerging artists. Though word is he's not above selling forgeries to the right buyers. The name struck a chord. She's mentioned him. Says he's helped the gallery secure some big pieces. I bet that's not all he's secured. Leo's expression softened. I'm sorry, brother. What's your play here? Dominic leaned back, mind racing. I need to know everything about Nelson. His business, his vulnerabilities, his connection to Vanessa. And I need to figure out if he's Olivia's biological father. Could be. Timeline fits. He's been in the area for at least 9 years. Give me everything you can. Bank records, properties, legal troubles. I want to know what he had for breakfast this morning. Leo nodded. And Vanessa? I'll handle her myself. Dominic's expression hardened. But first, I need to pay a visit to my dear mother-in-law. Dorothy Milligan wasn't expecting visitors that afternoon. When she opened her front door to find Dominic standing there, her surprise quickly morphed into wariness. Dominic, Thomas isn't home. I'm not here to see Thomas. He stepped forward, forcing her to either let him in or create a scene that the neighbors might notice. She chose the former, though her posture remained rigid. I suppose you want to discuss Sunday's unpleasantness, she said, leading him to the formal living room where no one actually lived. Unpleasantness. Dominic laughed without humor. That's what you call publicly humiliating an 8-year-old child. Dorothy perched on an antique settee. I simply stated a fact. A fact you had no right to reveal, especially not to Olivia. The girl would have found out eventually. These things always come to light. Dominic studied his mother-in-law, seeing beyond her carefully maintained facade to the insecurity beneath. Dorothy had spent her life climbing social ladders, marrying a man whose judicial position gave her the status she craved. Vanessa's marriage to a man with no pedigree had been a blow to her pride. How long have you known? He asked. Known what exactly? That Olivia isn't biologically mine. That Vanessa has been unfaithful. All of it. Dorothy sniffed. Vanessa confided in me shortly after the child was born. She was conflicted, naturally, but I advised her to keep it to herself. For the family's sake. For the family's sake, he repeated. Yet you had no problem exposing it now. What? A flicker of something, guilt? Fear? Crossed her face. It was thoughtless of me. The wine, perhaps. Bullshit. He leaned forward. You've been waiting for the right moment to drop that bomb. You wanted to hurt me, fine. But you hurt Olivia in the process, and that I can't forgive. Such dramatics. The child will recover. Children are resilient. Yes, they are. More resilient than the reputations of people who deliberately harm them. He stood. I wonder what Thomas's colleagues on the bench would think about a woman who psychologically abuses her granddaughter. Dorothy paled. You wouldn't dare. Try me. He headed for the door, then paused. One more thing. I know about Garrett Nelson. The name hit its mark. Dorothy's composure cracked, eyes widening. Vanessa told you? She didn't have to. I have my ways. As he left, Dominic felt a grim satisfaction. Dorothy's reaction confirmed his suspicions. Nelson was deeply entwined with his wife, possibly for years. And Dorothy knew exactly who he was. Back at his office, Dominic found Leo waiting with a thick file. Got what you need, plus something extra. Extra? Leo pulled out a document, a birth certificate. Olivia's original birth certificate. The father's name is listed as unknown, but there's a DNA paternity test from a private lab dated 2 weeks after her birth. Dominic scanned the results. It excludes me as the biological father. And there's this. Leo produced another document, adoption papers, and signed. Found them in Vanessa's safety deposit box records. She had them drawn up 8 years ago, but never filed them. The pieces clicked into place. Vanessa had known from the beginning that Olivia wasn't his. She'd considered having him legally adopt her, but had decided against it, perhaps because it would have required her to name the biological father or admit her deception. She's been planning to leave, Dominic realized. The emails with Nelson about big changes and being honest. They're planning to take Olivia and start over as a family. What are you going to do? Dominic slipped the documents into his briefcase. I'm going to beat them at their own game. That evening, he arrived home to find Vanessa in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with the same nervous energy as 2 nights before. Olivia was upstairs, music from her room providing cover for their conversation. We need to talk, he said, setting his briefcase on the counter. Vanessa set down her knife. About Sunday? Dom, I'm so sorry about my mother. She was completely out of line. Was she wrong? His wife's gaze dropped. It's complicated. No, it's actually very simple. He opened his briefcase, laid out the documents Leo had found. You knew Olivia wasn't mine before she was born. You had a paternity test done without my knowledge. You even considered adoption but never went through with it. The color drained from Vanessa's face. How did you? And now you and Garrett Nelson are planning to take my daughter and play happy family. Tell me, was that the plan all along? Use me until something better came along. No. Tears sprang to her eyes. It wasn't like that. I loved you. I still love you. Garrett and I. It's complicated. Again with that word. Nothing complicated about lying to your husband for 8 years. I was young and scared. Garrett wasn't ready to be a father, and you and I were just getting serious. Then we got married, and it seemed easier to just let it be. Dominic laughed bitterly. Easier for you, maybe. You love Olivia. She loves you. Isn't that what matters? What matters is that every word out of your mouth has been a lie. He gathered the documents, returned them to his briefcase. I'm picking up Olivia from school tomorrow. We're going to visit my sister in Vermont for a few days. Dom, please, we can work this out. There's nothing to work out. When we return, I expect you to be gone. You can't take her from me. I'm her mother, and I'm the only father she's ever known. His voice was steel. We'll work out a formal custody arrangement through lawyers. But this marriage is over. He turned to leave, but Vanessa grabbed his arm. What about Garrett? Are you going to tell Olivia about him? That's not your concern anymore. He wants to meet her. He has rights. Rights. Dominic's laugh was hollow. The man who abandoned his pregnant girlfriend and let another man raise his child for 8 years wants to talk about rights? He's lucky I haven't paid him a visit yet. Fear flashed across Vanessa's face. What does that mean? It means you should warn your boyfriend to stay very far away from my daughter. That night, Dominic sat in his home office, systematically transferring funds from their joint accounts to his private ones. Not everything. He wasn't trying to leave Vanessa destitute, but enough to ensure she couldn't empty the accounts before he returned. As he worked, he heard the soft padding of bare feet in the hallway. Olivia appeared in the doorway, clutching her favorite stuffed penguin. Daddy, are you and Mom getting a divorce? He beckoned her in, pulled her onto his lap. Why would you ask that? You're sleeping on the couch, and you're fighting a lot. Dominic sighed. She deserved honesty, at least as much as she could handle. Your mom and I are having some grown-up problems right now. We might need to live in different houses for a while. Her bottom lip trembled. Because of what Grandma said? About me not being family. No, sweetheart. He hugged her tightly. Grandma was wrong. You are family, my family. Nothing will ever change that. Promise. I promise. He kissed the top of her head. How would you like to visit Aunt Patricia for a few days? She's been asking about you. Olivia brightened. Can we go to the Maple Farm again? Absolutely. We'll leave tomorrow after school. After tucking her back into bed, Dominic returned to his office and called his sister. Dom? It's almost midnight. Patricia answered, her voice thick with sleep. Sorry, Patty. Need a favor. Can Olivia and I stay with you for a few days? His sister, ever perceptive, immediately sensed trouble. What's happened? He gave her the condensed version. Patricia's sharp intake of breath told him she understood the gravity of the situation. Bring her here, she said firmly. Stay as long as you need. Thanks, sis. One more thing. If Vanessa calls looking for us, I'll handle it. The steel in her voice reminded him that his sister, though gentle by nature, could be formidable when protecting family. And Dom, this Garrett person, what are you planning? Better you don't know the details. Just be careful. Olivia needs you. After they hung up, Dominic sat in the darkness of his office, scrolling through photos on his phone. Olivia as a newborn, tiny and perfect in his arms. Her first steps, reaching for him with absolute trust. The two of them building a snowman last winter, laughing as they positioned the carrot nose. In each image, he searched for signs that might have revealed she wasn't his blood. Found none. Because it didn't matter, she was his in every way that counted. And he would destroy anyone who tried to take her from him. The next day, Dominic left work early to pick up Olivia from school. They packed quickly, just enough for a long weekend, and hit the road before Vanessa returned from the gallery. He left her a brief note confirming their trip to Patricia's, then turned off his personal phone, switching to a secure line only Leo and Patricia knew about. As they crossed the state line into Vermont, Olivia dozed in the back seat, exhausted from the emotional upheaval of recent days. Dominic glanced at her in the rearview mirror, his resolve hardening. This was just the beginning. His daughter would never again feel the sting of rejection because of adults' machinations. And the people responsible for her pain would learn exactly what happened when they crossed Dominic Frost. Dorothy had unwittingly ignited a fuse with her cruel words at dinner. What she didn't realize was that she'd set in motion events that would change all their lives forever. My mother-in-law gave every grandchild a gift. Except my daughter, he murmured to himself, remembering the moment that had started it all. She's not really family, she said. My daughter blinked back tears. I said nothing. But that silence hadn't been acquiescence. It had been the calm before the storm. But that night, my wife walked into her mother's house with a document. He continued, his voice barely audible. They didn't laugh after that. No, they wouldn't laugh. Because the document, the adoption papers Vanessa had never filed, was about to become the first weapon in his arsenal. Properly executed, it would legally establish him as Olivia's father, regardless of biology. And it was just the beginning of what he had planned for those who had betrayed him. As Vermont's mountains rose in the distance, Dominic felt the weight of the past falling away. In its place grew something colder, more focused. They wanted to play games with his family. Fine. Game on. Chapter 4. Sanctuary and Strategy. Patricia Frost's farmhouse sat nestled against the rolling hills of northern Vermont, a weathered clapboard structure that had stood for over a century. When Dominic pulled into the gravel driveway, his sister was already waiting on the porch, arms crossed against the early evening chill. At 40, Patricia was the older of the Frost siblings, with the same dark hair and sharp features as her brother, though life had softened her edges in ways his military service had hardened his. She had chosen a different path, psychology professor at a small liberal arts college, single by choice, devoted to her research and her small circle of loved ones. Uncle Leo's truck is here, Olivia exclaimed, fully awake now and pointing to the black pickup parked to the side of the house. Looks like we have a welcoming committee, Dominic replied, forcing lightness into his tone. As they climbed out of the car, Patricia descended the porch steps, arms outstretched for Olivia. There's my favorite niece. Look how tall you've gotten since Christmas. Olivia ran to her, accepting the warm embrace. I'm your only niece, Aunt Patty. Details. Patricia laughed, then met her brother's gaze over the child's head. Her expression sobered at whatever she saw in his eyes. Leo's inside making his famous hot chocolate. Why don't you go surprise him, Liv? Once Olivia had disappeared into the house, Patricia turned to Dominic. You look like hell. Feel worse. He pulled their bags from the trunk. Thanks for this, Patty. Family takes care of family. She took one of the suitcases. The real kind, not the Dorothy Milligan version. Inside, they found Leo entertaining Olivia with stories of his and Dominic's army days, carefully edited for 8-year-old ears. The large man looked comically out of place in Patricia's feminine living room, his muscular frame dwarfing the floral armchair he occupied. And then your dad climbed all the way up this cliff with nothing but a rope in his bare hands, Leo was saying, gesturing expansively. Just like Spider-Man, except with bigger muscles. Dad doesn't have Spider-Man muscles, Olivia giggled. He has dad muscles. The best kind, Patricia interjected. Hey, Liv, I set up the craft table in the sunroom with all that glitter paper you like. Why don't you make something while the grown-ups talk boring business stuff? Once Olivia was happily occupied with art supplies, the three adults gathered in Patricia's kitchen. Leo had brought a thick folder of documents, which he spread across the table. Garrett Nelson, age 43, he began without preamble. Born in Seattle, moved east for college, never left. art history degree from NYU, worked for Sotheby's before going independent 10 years ago. Opened his gallery around the same time Vanessa started at hers. That's when they met, Dominic surmised. Right before we got serious. Leo nodded. Gallery records show regular consulting payments from Vanessa's employer to Nelson's business. Could be legitimate, could be a cover for meetings. What's his financial situation? Patricia asked, ever practical. Comfortable, but not rich. The gallery turns a modest profit. He has a loft downtown, paid off. No major debts except a business line of credit. Leo pulled out several photographs. He also has a cabin upstate. Goes there most weekends, usually alone. Dominic studied the images, a modern building with large windows overlooking a secluded lake. Isolated. Very, Leo confirmed. Nearest neighbor is over a mile away. Patricia frowned. Dom, what exactly are you planning? Nothing illegal. The lie came easily. Just gathering information. His sister wasn't fooled. Bullshit. I know that look. It's the same one you had when Billy Kaufman stole my bike in 7th grade. Billy Kaufman got what he deserved, Dominic replied evenly. He spent 3 days in the hospital. And he never stole anything again. Leo cleared his throat. There's more. Nelson isn't as clean as his tailored suits suggest. I found irregularities in his gallery's provenance records. Several pieces he sold have questionable origins. Art forgeries? Dominic asked. More like genuine pieces with fabricated ownership histories. Perfect for money laundering or tax evasion. A plan began to take shape in Dominic's mind. Is there enough evidence for criminal charges? Not yet, but I know people who could build a case, given the right incentive. Patricia watched her brother's face. Dom, this isn't just about Olivia anymore, is it? You're talking about destroying this man. He's trying to steal my daughter. And you're planning what? To frame him for art fraud? Have him arrested? What will that accomplish except to traumatize Olivia further? It will keep him away from her, Dominic replied coldly. And from Vanessa. Leo and Patricia exchanged worried glances. Brother, I get the anger, Leo said carefully. God knows I'd feel the same. But there are legal ways to handle this. Legal ways that could still result in shared custody, Dominic countered. I'm not taking that risk. Patricia leaned forward. Have you considered that someday Olivia might want to know about her biological father? That keeping them apart could backfire when she's older and understands what happened. The question hit a nerve. Dominic had been so focused on protecting Olivia now that he hadn't considered how his actions might affect her future. I'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And what about Vanessa? Patricia pressed. She's still Olivia's mother. You can't cut her out completely. I'm not trying to, Dominic admitted. But I can't trust her judgment right now. Not when she's under Nelson's influence. Leo pulled out another document, the unsigned adoption papers. We need to address this first. Even with modern courts recognizing non-biological parents, having legal adoption papers would strengthen your position. Vanessa would have to agree to the adoption, Patricia pointed out. She doesn't have much choice, Dominic replied. Not when the alternative is me exposing her affair and lying to a court. His sister's expression hardened. You're talking about blackmail. I'm talking about protecting my daughter by any means necessary. From the sunroom came the sound of Olivia humming to herself as she worked on her art project, blissfully unaware of the scheming taking place in the kitchen. The sound momentarily softened Dominic's expression. Look, he said, voice lowered. I'm not going to do anything that would hurt Olivia. But I need to ensure that Nelson can't swoop in and claim father's rights after abandoning her for 8 years. And I need Vanessa to understand there are consequences for her deception. Patricia sighed. At least promise me you'll think before you act. Revenge might feel satisfying in the moment, but it rarely brings peace. I don't want peace, Dominic replied. I want justice. Later that night, after Olivia was asleep in the guest room, Dominic sat on Patricia's porch, nursing a whiskey as he watched stars emerge in the clear Vermont sky. His sister joined him, wrapping herself in a thick cardigan against the evening chill. Remember when Dad used to take us camping up here? She asked, settling into the rocking chair beside him. Summer constellations, Dominic murmured. He taught us to navigate by them. He also taught us that strength isn't about dominating others. It's about standing firm in your principles, even when it's difficult. Dominic took a sip of his drink. Is this where you tell me revenge isn't a principle? No, this is where I remind you that you're a good father, that Olivia adores you, and that whatever you do next will affect her, even if she doesn't see it directly. They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the gentle creaking of Patricia's rocking chair against the wooden porch. I don't know who I am without them, Dominic finally admitted, voice barely audible. I built everything around being Vanessa's husband, Olivia's father. Now half of that identity is a lie. Patricia reached over, squeezed his hand. You're still Olivia's father. Nothing can change that. Not biology, not Vanessa's lies, not even Dorothy's cruelty. And Vanessa? What am I supposed to do about her? That depends on what you want the end result to be. If you truly want to end the marriage, that's your right. But if there's any part of you that still loves her, love isn't the issue, Dominic interrupted. Trust is. And once that's broken, I don't know how to get it back. His phone buzzed, the secure line that only Leo and Patricia had the number for. The screen showed a message from Leo. V called. Wants to know when you're coming back. Says she needs to talk. Dominic typed a quick reply. Stall her. Need more time. Patricia watched him. You'll have to face her eventually. I know. But first, I need all the pieces in place. The next 3 days passed in a strange bubble of normalcy. During daylight hours, Dominic was the attentive father, taking Olivia to the nearby maple farm as promised, helping her build a fort in Patricia's backyard, losing spectacularly at board games in the evening. But after she went to bed, he transformed into a different man, cold, plotting with Leo via encrypted calls and messages. On their 4th morning in Vermont, Dominic woke to find Olivia already downstairs, helping Patricia make pancakes in shapes of animals. His daughter's laughter, rare since the disastrous dinner at the Milligans, warmed something in his chest. Daddy, look. I made an elephant pancake. She proudly displayed her creation, trunk slightly misshapen but recognizable. That's amazing, kiddo. Maybe you should be a chef instead of an astronaut. I can be both, she declared with the certainty only children possess. Astronaut chefs could make special space pancakes for NASA. Patricia caught his eye over Olivia's head, her expression softening. The message was clear. This is what matters. Don't lose sight of it. After breakfast, Dominic checked his secure phone to find several messages from Leo. The most recent simply read, Call me. Breakthrough. He stepped onto the porch, dialed the number. Got something big, Leo said without greeting. Nelson's been skimming from his investors. Created a fake exhibition, collected funds, then claimed the show was canceled due to artist withdrawal. Money disappeared. Can you prove it? Better than that. I found one of the artists who supposedly pulled out. Guy had no idea his name was attached to the exhibition in the first place. He's furious, willing to go on record. Dominic processed this information. Financial fraud carries serious penalties. 5 to 15 years, depending on the amount and circumstances, Leo confirmed. Plus, his reputation in the art world would be destroyed. No one would touch him again. Have you approached him yet? Waiting for your go-ahead. What's the play here, Dom? Dominic gazed out at the Vermont countryside, the rolling hills and maple forests that had provided sanctuary while he gathered his thoughts. I want to talk to Vanessa first. See if she'll sign the adoption papers willingly. And if she won't, then we move to Plan B. Nelson goes down, and she can decide if she wants to go down with him. When he returned inside, he found Olivia showing Patricia her latest art project, a family portrait done in glitter and construction paper. There were 3 figures, Olivia in the middle, Dominic on one side, Vanessa on the other. They were all holding hands, smiling beneath a yellow sun. The sight stopped him in his tracks. For all his plotting and planning, he hadn't fully considered what Olivia wanted. In her 8-year-old mind, despite the tension she'd sensed, her family was still intact. His vengeance against Nelson and Vanessa might protect her legally, but it would shatter that image forever. Patricia noticed his expression. Liv, why don't you go pack up your things? We should get on the road soon if we want to beat traffic. Once they were alone, she turned to him. Had your breakthrough? Something like that. He nodded toward the child's drawing. I've been so focused on what I want, what Vanessa wants, what Nelson might want. I haven't really thought about what's best for Olivia. And now I think I need to talk to my wife. Really talk, not just accuse and threaten. Patricia squeezed his shoulder. That's the brother I know. By early afternoon, they were packed and ready to leave. Olivia hugged her aunt tightly, extracting promises for another visit soon. As Dominic loaded their bags into the car, Patricia pulled him aside. Whatever happens with Vanessa and this Garrett person, Remember, you're not alone, she said. You have family, real family, who love you and Olivia. I know. He embraced her briefly. Thanks for everything, Patty. The drive home was quiet, Olivia alternating between napping and watching the landscape through her window. Dominic's mind raced with scenarios, strategies, contingency plans. By the time they crossed back into their home state, he had decided on his approach. No more reactive anger. No more threats or ultimatums. It was time for precision, for the kind of tactical thinking that had kept him alive in combat and successful in business. He would offer Vanessa a choice, one with clear consequences laid out in advance. She could sign the adoption papers, agree to reasonable custody arrangements, and end her relationship with Nelson, or she could watch as both she and her lover faced the consequences of their actions, legal and otherwise. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even mercy, but it was a path forward that kept Olivia's well-being at the center. As they pulled into their neighborhood, Dominic noticed an unfamiliar car in their driveway, a sleek silver Audi with custom wheels. Beside it stood a tall man in an expensive-looking suit, leaning against the vehicle with casual confidence. Garrett Nelson had come calling, and Dominic's carefully constructed plan immediately shifted into something darker. Chapter 5. Confrontations. Dominic pulled to the curb half a block from their house, mind racing through options. Olivia sat in the back seat, oblivious to the significance of the stranger in their driveway. "Hey, kiddo," he said, keeping his voice light. "Change of plans. How would you feel about a surprise visit to the movies?" Her face lit up. "Really? On a school night? Special occasion." He put the car in reverse. "Let's grab some dinner after, too." As they drove away, Dominic called Leo on the car's Bluetooth. "Nelson's at my house. Need you to run interference." "On it," Leo replied. "Want me to scare him off or follow him?" "Follow. I want to know where he goes, who he meets." "What about Vanessa?" "I'll deal with her later." After dropping Olivia at the cinema with enough money for tickets and concessions, the theater manager was a client who promised to keep an eye on her during the PG animated feature. Dominic circled back toward his neighborhood. Leo texted that Nelson had left after about 20 minutes, and Vanessa remained at the house alone. Perfect. He parked in the driveway and sat for a moment, gathering his thoughts. The rage that had fueled him for days had crystallized into something colder, more focused. He wasn't here for a shouting match or emotional confrontation. This was tactical. Vanessa opened the door before he could use his key. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her normally perfect hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail. She wore casual clothes, jeans, and a sweater, rather than her usual gallery attire. "Where's Olivia?" she asked immediately. "Safe." He stepped past her into the house. "We need to talk. I've been calling for days. Your sister wouldn't tell me anything except that you were both fine." Vanessa followed him into the living room. "I was worried sick." "Funny time to start worrying about your family," Dominic replied coolly, setting his briefcase on the coffee table. "Right after your boyfriend drops by for a visit." She flinched. "It wasn't like that. Garrett came by too. I don't care why he came. I care that he was at my house, near my daughter." "Our daughter," Vanessa corrected, anger flashing. "And whether you like it or not, he has a connection to her. A connection he's shown zero interest in for 8 years. Dominic opened his briefcase, removed a folder. "Until now, when it's convenient for him." "That's not fair. I never told him about Olivia until recently." Dominic stared at her. "You expect me to believe that? You've been working with him for years." "Working, yes. But we weren't together like that again until recently." She sank onto the couch. "It's complicated." "Stop saying that," he snapped. "Nothing about this is complicated. You lied. For years. About something fundamental." Vanessa looked away. "I was afraid of losing you. And then, after Olivia was born and you bonded with her so completely, telling the truth seemed cruel. Unnecessary." "Unnecessary for whom? You?" "Because it would have been pretty damn necessary for me. For all of us." She met his gaze defiantly. "You love Olivia. She loves you. What good would it have done to disrupt that?" Dominic laughed bitterly. "So noble of you, protecting us from the truth while you rekindled your relationship with her real father." "It wasn't like that," she insisted. "Garrett and it happened gradually. The gallery collaborations, late nights working on exhibitions. I never planned to fall back in love with him. But you did." Dominic's voice was flat. "And now you two have plans, don't you? The happy little family that should have been." I don't know what we have, Vanessa admitted. But Garrett wants to know his daughter. Can you blame him? Yes, actually I can. Dominic opened the folder, laid out the adoption papers. He had 8 years to step up and didn't. I'm the one who's been there every day, for milestone, skin knee, nightmare. I'm her father in way that matters. Vanessa stared at the papers. What is this? Legal adoption. Making official what's already true. You want me to let you adopt her now? After everything. I want to protect her from the legal mess that's coming if Nelson tries to assert his rights. Dominic kept his voice steady. It's what's best for Olivia. And what about my rights? Her relationship with me? That depends on you. He leaned forward. Sign these papers, agree to reasonable custody arrangements, and end things with Nelson, and we can move forward amicably for Olivia's sake. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. And if I don't, then things get unpleasant. Dominic pulled out another document. The file Leo had compiled on Nelson's financial irregularities. Your boyfriend has some explaining to do about his business practices. The kind of explaining that happens in court, with the FBI present. The color drained from Vanessa's face. You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a choice. Protection for our daughter, or protection for your lover. Choose wisely. For a long moment, Vanessa said nothing, her gaze moving between the adoption papers and the evidence against Garrett. When she finally looked up, her expression had hardened. I need time to think. To talk to Garrett. You have until tomorrow. Dominic replaced the documents in his briefcase. I'm taking Olivia to a hotel tonight. Call me when you've made your decision. As he stood to leave, Vanessa caught his arm. Dom, wait. Does Olivia know about any of this? No. And I'd like to keep it that way as long as possible. He gently removed her hand. That's something we should agree on, at least. We've never agreed more. Tears welled in her eyes. I do love her, you know, more than anything. Then do what's right for her. For once. After picking up Olivia from the movie theater and checking into a hotel downtown, Dominic sat on the balcony of their suite, watching the city lights while his daughter slept inside. His phone vibrated with a text from Leo. Nelson went straight to a lawyer after leaving your place. High-end family law specialist. The message confirmed what Dominic already suspected. Nelson was planning to fight for paternity rights. The confrontation had accelerated his timeline, forcing all parties to show their hands earlier than he'd intended. He typed back, keep surveillance on him. Need to know his next moves. Then he called Patricia, speaking softly to avoid waking Olivia. How did it go? His sister asked. About as expected. She's talking to Nelson, weighing her options. And if she chooses him? Dominic watched a plane cross the night sky, its lights blinking steadily. Then I moved to plan B. Dom, I know what you're going to say. That revenge won't help Olivia. That I need to think long term. Actually, Patricia said, surprising him. I was going to say that whatever you decide, make sure it's something you can live with. Not just tomorrow or next week, but years from now, when Olivia's old enough to understand what happened. The words hit him harder than any lecture could have. I'm trying to do the right thing here, Patty. I know you are. Just remember that right isn't always the same as easiest or most satisfying in the moment. After they hung up, Dominic continued his vigil on the balcony, turning options over in his mind. The adoption papers were his best legal protection, but if Vanessa refused to sign them and sided with Nelson, he would need leverage, pressure points that would force their compliance without harming Olivia in the process. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Leo, this one with an attached audio file. Recorded Nelson's call with V after lawyer meeting. You need to hear this. Dominic plugged in earphones and pressed play. The recording was slightly muffled, likely from a distance, but clear enough. He knows everything. Vanessa's voice, tense and frightened. About us, about Olivia. He wants me to sign adoption papers. Don't sign anything. Nelson's voice was smooth, confident. My lawyer says I have a strong case for paternity rights, especially since Dominic isn't biologically related. But he's raised her from birth. The courts will consider that. Courts also consider biological connections. Plus, I have resources, connections. We can make this work, Vanessa. A pause, then Vanessa's voice again, softer. What about his threats? The evidence he says he has about your business? Nelson laughed. Probably bluffing. Even if he has something, my lawyer can handle it. This is about Olivia, our daughter. Don't you want her to know her real father? Dom is the only father she's ever known, Vanessa protested. This will devastate her. Kids are resilient. She'll adjust. And once we're officially a family, she'll understand it was for the best. The recording ended. Dominic sat motionless, the city lights blurring as rage coursed through him. Nelson's casual dismissal of his relationship with Olivia, the confident assumption that he could simply step in and claim his rights after 8 years of absence. It was beyond arrogance. It was a declaration of war. Dominic dialed Leo's number. I've heard enough. Implement Plan B. All of it. You sure, brother? Once we start this, there's no going back. I'm sure. Nelson wants to play hardball? Fine. But he's about to learn he's not the only one with resources and connections. The next morning, Dominic took Olivia to breakfast at her favorite diner, maintaining a facade of normalcy while his mind raced with the details of what was now in motion. Leo had spent the night activating contacts, preparing evidence, setting traps. Can we go home after school? Olivia asked, swirling her straw in her chocolate milk. I need my science project materials. We might stay at the hotel one more night, kiddo. He reached across the table, squeezed her hand. Mom and I are still figuring some things out. Her perceptive gaze searched his face. Is this because of what Grandma said? About me not being real family. The question pierced him. No, sweetheart. Grandma was wrong about that. You are family, my family. Nothing will ever change that. Then why can't we all be together? You and me and Mom. How did he explain adult betrayals to an 8-year-old? How did he tell her that the foundations of their family had been built on lies? Sometimes, he began carefully, grown-ups make mistakes that hurt each other. Your mom and I need some time to figure out how to fix those mistakes. But you will fix them, right? You always say we should fix our mistakes. The hope in her voice nearly broke him. I promise we'll make things right for you, Liv. One way or another. After dropping her at school, Dominic drove to his office, where Leo waited with updates. Everything's in place, his friend reported. The financial evidence has been anonymously delivered to the FBI's art crimes team. They're already preparing to move on Nelson's gallery. As for the other matter, Dorothy, Leo nodded. The documents you wanted are ready. Patricia helped with the psychological assessment portion. Dominic took the folder Leo offered, scanning its contents. A comprehensive report detailing Dorothy Milligan's psychological manipulation of Olivia, including the incident at dinner and patterns of favoritism toward her other grandchildren. The document had been expertly prepared to suggest potential emotional harm to a minor, the kind of report that could sway a family court judge in a custody battle. And this? Dominic held up another document. Thomas Milligan's sealed judicial misconduct investigation from 15 years ago, Leo confirmed. Dorothy buried it to protect his reputation, but the details are troubling. Enough to convince her to stay out of this fight. More than enough. The old judge would face public humiliation if this got out, even after all these years. Dominic absorbed this information, mentally reviewing each piece of his strategy. The FBI would be moving on Nelson's gallery by afternoon. Dorothy would receive her warning to back off by lunch. And Vanessa would have to make her choice knowing exactly what was at stake. What about Olivia? Leo asked quietly. Have you thought about how all this will affect her? Dominic stared out his office window at the city below. Every second of every day since this started. That's why failure isn't an option. His phone rang, Vanessa's number. He answered on speaker. I've made my decision, she said without preamble. I'll sign the papers, but I have conditions. I'm listening. Generous visitation rights. Holidays split equally. And I want your word that you won't keep her from me out of spite. Agreed, Dominic replied immediately. And Nelson? A pause. I've told him the adoption is happening. That Olivia's welfare comes first. How did he take it? Not well, she admitted. He's determined to assert his rights. Let me worry about Nelson. Dominic's voice was steel. Be at the lawyer's office at 2. We'll sign everything then. After they disconnected, Leo raised an eyebrow. She caved faster than expected. Because she knows what's coming for Nelson, Dominic surmised. She's cutting her losses. Or protecting her daughter, Leo suggested. Give her some credit for that, at least. Perhaps his friend was right. Despite everything, Vanessa was Olivia's mother. Her love for their daughter had never been in question, only her judgment and honesty. At 1:30, Dominic arrived at his lawyer's office in the financial district. Martin Delgado had handled his business contracts for years, a shark in a well-tailored suit who enjoyed the intricacies of legal warfare. The adoption papers are ready, Martin said, laying out documents on the conference table. Once signed and filed, they'll establish you as Olivia's legal father with all rights and responsibilities thereof. And if Nelson contests them, he can try, but with the mother's consent and your established relationship with the child, he'd face an uphill battle, especially if his other legal issues come to light. Dominic checked his watch. Any word on that front? Martin's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then smiled thinly. FBI just executed a search warrant at Nelson Gallery. Seems they received an anonymous tip about financial irregularities and potential art fraud. Timing is everything, Dominic murmured. When Vanessa arrived, she looked both exhausted and resolute. She greeted Martin coolly, then turned to Dominic. Before we do this, I need to hear you say it, she stated. That you're doing this for Olivia, not to punish me or Garrett. Every decision I've made has been for her protection, Dominic replied honestly. That hasn't changed. Something in his tone must have convinced her, because she nodded and took the seat Martin indicated. The signing process was brief and anticlimactic. Signature after signature on multiple copies of legal documents that would cement Dominic's relationship with Olivia in the eyes of the law. When it was done, Martin gathered the papers. I'll file these immediately. Congratulations, Mr. Frost. You're officially Olivia's father. I always was, Dominic replied. Now the law recognizes it too. As they left the lawyer's office, Vanessa's phone rang. She checked the screen, paled, then answered. Garrett? What's wrong? Dominic could hear the panic in Nelson's voice even from several feet away. Words like FBI, search warrant, and frozen accounts drifted toward him. I don't understand, Vanessa was saying. What evidence? From where? Nelson's response was lost as they stepped into the elevator, but Vanessa's wide-eyed glance at Dominic spoke volumes. She knew, perhaps not the details, but enough to connect the dots between his threats and Nelson's sudden legal troubles. What did you do? She whispered as the elevator descended. I protected our daughter, he replied simply. As promised. In the lobby, they parted ways, Vanessa to her gallery, Dominic to pick up Olivia from school. As he walked to his car, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over, Frost. You have no idea who you're dealing with. GN. Dominic smiled grimly as he typed a response. Neither do you. The first battle was won, the adoption papers signed and filed. But the war, it seemed, was just beginning. And Dominic was more than ready. Chapter 6. Countermoves. The first signs of autumn painted the trees in gold and crimson as Dominic waited outside Olivia's school. 2 weeks had passed since the adoption papers were signed. 2 weeks of careful navigation through the new reality of their fractured family. Olivia had adjusted to the custody arrangement with the resilience of youth. Weekdays with Dominic in the family home, weekends with Vanessa in her new apartment downtown. The transition hadn't been seamless. There were tears, questions, moments of confusion, but they had weathered it together. As for Garrett Nelson, the FBI investigation into his gallery operations continued to expand. 3 paintings with fabricated provenance had been seized, bank accounts frozen pending further inquiry. He'd been released on bail, but faced mounting legal troubles that would likely consume him for months, if not years. Just as Dominic had planned. Dad. Olivia's voice cut through his thoughts as she bounded down the school steps, backpack bouncing against her small frame. I got picked for the science fair team. That's my girl. He scooped her up, twirling her once before setting her back down. We should celebrate. Ice cream. Before dinner? Her eyes widened in mock scandal. What would Mom say? What Mom doesn't know won't hurt her, he replied with a conspiratorial wink. Our secret. As they walked to the car, Olivia chattered about her day, the science fair project, a disagreement with her friend Taylor, the substitute teacher who couldn't pronounce anyone's name correctly. Dominic listened attentively, savoring these moments of normalcy amid the chaos of recent weeks. At the ice cream parlor, as Olivia deliberated between flavors with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice, Dominic's phone vibrated with a text from Leo. Nelson made bail. Just left courthouse. Surveillance in place. He frowned, typing back one-handed. Keep me posted on movements. Triple chocolate fudge, please, Olivia decided finally, pointing to the darkest option in the display case. With rainbow sprinkles. Coming right up, kiddo. Dominic smiled at the server. And coffee for me. They settled at a table by the window, Olivia demolishing her treat while Dominic sipped his coffee, mind racing with contingency plans. Nelson's message, "This isn't over," had proven more than empty posturing. Despite his legal troubles, he'd hired a high-profile family attorney specializing in paternity cases and filed for a DNA test to establish biological connection to Olivia. The adoption papers provided strong legal protection, but Dominic knew courts could sometimes be swayed by biological claims, especially when backed by the kind of resources Nelson could still command, even with frozen accounts. The man had connections, friends in high places, wealthy patrons willing to lend support. "Dad," Olivia's voice pulled him back to the present. "You're doing that thing with your eyebrows." "What thing?" "The worried thing. When they get all scrunchy." She demonstrated, pulling her own eyebrows together in an exaggerated frown. "Is it about Mom? Is she okay?" Dominic softened his expression. "Mom's fine, kiddo. Just thinking about work stuff." "Liar," she accused, but without heat. "It's okay. Aunt Patty says adults worry about adult things, and kids shouldn't have to worry about them too. Your Aunt Patty is very smart. She also says you worry too much and should take up yoga." Dominic laughed despite himself. "Did she now? Maybe I'll stick to running." His phone buzzed again, another text from Leo. Nelson headed to Vanessa's gallery. Confrontation likely. Dominic checked his watch. Almost 5, closing time for the gallery. If Nelson created a scene, it could upset the delicate balance they'd established for Olivia's sake. He needed to intervene, but bringing Olivia along was out of the question. "How about we drop by Uncle Leo's office after this?" he suggested casually. "He mentioned having a new gadget he wants to show you." Olivia's eyes lit up. She adored Leo and his endless supply of technological wonders. "The drone he was talking about at dinner? That's the one. We'll just stay a little while, then head home for dinner." 20 minutes later, they arrived at Leo's sleek downtown office. The former soldier had transformed his military experience into a thriving private investigation and security consulting business, operating from the top floor of a converted warehouse with views of the river. "There's my favorite junior detective," Leo boomed as they entered, swinging Olivia up for a bear hug that made her giggle. Just in time to test the new surveillance drone. While Olivia was distracted with the promised technology, Dominic pulled Leo aside. "I need to check on Vanessa." Nelson's headed to the gallery. Leo nodded, understanding immediately. "Go. We'll hold down the fort here. Take my car, less recognizable than yours." He tossed over a set of keys. "Be careful, brother. Nelson's desperate, and desperate men make dangerous moves." "I can handle Nelson." Dominic's voice was cold confidence. "Make sure Olivia stays here until I call. No matter what." The gallery was located in the Arts District, a renovated industrial space with high ceilings and polished concrete floors. As Dominic parked across the street, he spotted Nelson's Audi already outside, its parking job hasty and crooked, evidence of his agitated state. Through the gallery's front windows, Dominic could see Vanessa and Nelson in what appeared to be a heated discussion. Her arms were crossed defensively while he gesticulated wildly, face flushed with anger. The few remaining patrons were being ushered out by a nervous-looking assistant. Dominic entered quietly, catching the tail end of Nelson's tirade. "Ruined everything. My reputation, my business, my chance to know my own daughter." The art dealer's polished facade had cracked, revealing the desperate man beneath. "And for what? So your ex-husband can play daddy to a child that isn't even his." "Lower your voice," Vanessa hissed, eyes darting to the assistant who was locking the front door. "This isn't the place." "When is the place?" "You won't answer my calls. Your lawyer returns my lawyer's calls with threats. Meanwhile, the FBI is tearing apart my life based on evidence that mysteriously appeared the day after I tried to assert my rights." "That has nothing to do with me," Vanessa insisted. "But it has everything to do with me," Dominic interjected, stepping from the shadows. "Doesn't it, Nelson?" Both Vanessa and Nelson startled at his appearance. The art dealer recovered quickly, his surprise morphing into contempt. "Frost, come to gloat over your handiwork." Nelson straightened his designer jacket, attempting to regain composure. "Framing me for financial crimes won't change biology. Olivia is my daughter, and sooner or later, she'll know the truth." "Biology doesn't make you a father," Dominic replied evenly. "Showing up does. Every day for 8 years. Where were you during the midnight fevers? The first steps?" The nightmares and skinned knees and proud moments. I didn't know she existed until recently. A convenient excuse. Dominic turned to Vanessa. Is everything okay here? Do you need me to escort Mr. Nelson out? Before she could answer, Nelson stepped closer to Dominic, voice lowered to a dangerous register. You think you've won? This is just the beginning. I have friends you couldn't imagine. People who can make problems disappear. Including you. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Nelson's smile was cold. You forget, I know things about Vanessa that you don't. Things that would destroy any custody agreement if they came to light. Vanessa paled. Garrett, don't. What's he talking about? Dominic demanded, gaze shifting between them. Nelson laughed, the sound brittle with desperation. Why don't you ask your ex-wife about Prague? About what really happened there 3 years ago, while you were playing the devoted husband back home? Enough. Vanessa's voice cracked. Both of you just stop. This isn't helping anyone, least of all Olivia. The mention of their daughter's name seemed to penetrate the tension. Dominic stepped back, reassessing. Whatever had happened in Prague, and he would find out, wasn't worth creating a scene that might eventually reach Olivia's ears. You're right, he conceded, addressing Vanessa while keeping Nelson in his peripheral vision. This isn't the place. Nelson, I suggest you leave while you still can. Or what? The art dealer scoffed. More anonymous tips to the FBI? More fabricated evidence. The evidence is real, Dominic countered. Your crimes are real. The only fabrication was your belief that you could walk into my daughter's life and claim her after 8 years of absence. Nelson's jaw tightened. This isn't over, Frost. It is for tonight. Dominic gestured toward the door. Leave, or I call the police and report you for violating the conditions of your bail by harassing witnesses. For a moment, Nelson seemed about to argue further, but something in Dominic's expression must have convinced him of the futility. With a final glare, he stalked toward the exit. Think about what I said, Vanessa, he called over his shoulder. About Prague. Some secrets can't stay buried forever. After he left, silence engulfed the gallery. Vanessa dismissed her assistant, then collapsed onto a minimalist bench, hands shaking slightly. What was that about Prague? Dominic asked quietly. Nothing important. Her response was too quick, too defensive. Garrett's desperate, that's all. Trying to drive a wedge between us to strengthen his position. Is it working? She looked up, meeting his gaze directly. No. Whatever happened in the past, Olivia's future is what matters now. I signed those adoption papers because it was right for her, not because of your threats or Garrett's manipulation. Dominic studied her face, searching for signs of deception, but finding only exhaustion and resolve. You could have chosen him, backed his paternity claim, fought me in court. And what would that have achieved? She sighed. Months of legal battles, psychological evaluations, a child caught in the middle of adult ego wars. She shook her head. Olivia loves you. You've been her father in every way that matters. Biology doesn't change that. The echo of his own thoughts surprised him. Despite everything, Vanessa still understood what was most important, their daughter's well-being. Thank you, he said simply, for making the right choice. She attempted a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. How is she? Really? Resilient. Confused sometimes, sad others. But she's adjusting. He sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. She misses you when she's with me. Talks about the things you do together on weekends. Same when she's with me. Vanessa's voice softened. She showed me her science fair project idea yesterday. It's all about security systems, completely your influence. Despite everything, the shared pride in their daughter created a moment of connection between them, a reminder of the bond that had once been the foundation of their marriage. The moment was broken by Dominic's phone ringing, Leo's ringtone. Sorry, I need to take this. Leo? What's happening? He answered, stepping away from Vanessa. Nelson just called someone from his car, Leo reported. My guy only caught part of the conversation, but it sounded like he's accelerating whatever he had planned. Mentioned leverage and making Frost pay. Any specifics? Nothing concrete, but he headed straight to his lawyer's office after leaving the gallery. Something about filing emergency motions. Dominic processed this information. Keep surveillance on him. I'm heading back to you now. After hanging up, he turned to Vanessa. I have to go. Olivia's waiting at Leo's office. Is everything okay? Concern creased her forehead. Just some developments with Nelson. Nothing to worry about yet. The lie came easily, a a shield to protect her from the escalating conflict. I'll have her call you before bedtime. As he drove back to Leo's office, Dominic's mind raced with possibilities. What leverage could Nelson possibly have? What had happened in Prague that made Vanessa so nervous? And most importantly, how did it connect to Olivia? He needed answers, and he needed them fast. Because one thing was clear, Nelson wasn't backing down. The adoption papers had only escalated his determination, pushing him toward increasingly desperate measures. And desperate men, as Leo had warned, were dangerous indeed. When he reached Leo's office, he found Olivia happily occupied with the promised drone, directing its flight patterns with tablet controls while Leo supervised. The normalcy of the scene, his daughter laughing, face illuminated with childhood wonder, strengthened Dominic's resolve. This was what he was fighting for. This was what he would protect at all costs. "Dad, look," Olivia called when she spotted him. "I can make it do figure eights." "Impressive piloting, kiddo," he praised, exchanging a meaningful glance with Leo over her head. "Ready to head home for dinner?" Once Olivia was safely buckled into his car, Dominic pulled Leo aside for a final update. Nelson's lawyer filed for an emergency hearing tomorrow morning, Leo reported in low tones, requesting judicial intervention and expedited DNA testing. On what grounds? That's the concerning part. Leo's expression darkened. The filing references evidence of psychological manipulation and parental alienation perpetrated by you. Claims he has documentation proving you're an unfit guardian. Dominic's blood ran cold. What documentation? Unknown. But given his resources and connections, we can't dismiss the threat. Keep digging. I want to know exactly what he thinks he has before that hearing. Dominic glanced toward his car, where Olivia waited patiently. And Leo? Activate the Prague Protocol. Whatever happened there 3 years ago, it's somehow connected to all this. Consider it done. Leo squeezed his shoulder. Get some rest, brother. Tomorrow's going to be a battleground. That night, after tucking Olivia into bed with a story and letting her call Vanessa to say goodnight, Dominic sat in his home office, systematically reviewing the past 3 years of their lives. Bank records, travel itineraries, phone logs, searching for clues about Prague. He remembered the trip vaguely, an international art fair Vanessa had attended for the gallery. She'd been gone for a week, returning with stories of Gothic architecture and cultural revelations. Nothing had seemed amiss at the time, but in retrospect, there had been subtle changes afterward. A new guardedness in her manner, occasional bouts of melancholy she'd attributed to jet lag or work stress. His secure phone rang shortly after midnight. Leo. Found something, his friend said without preamble. 3 years ago, Vanessa traveled to Prague with a gallery delegation. Official records show she stayed at the Hotel Europa with the rest of the group. But her credit card shows charges at a different hotel across town for 3 of those nights. The Alchemist Grand, a 5-star property where Nelson was also registered as a guest. The revelation wasn't surprising, given what he now knew about their relationship, but it still stung. So they met in Prague. That's hardly shocking at this point. It's not just that they met, Leo continued. There's more. I hacked into Nelson's cloud storage. Is that legal? Not remotely, but necessary. Leo paused. There are photos, Dom, of Vanessa in Prague, with Nelson, and a child. Dominic's grip tightened on the phone. What child? A little girl, maybe 4 or 5 at the time. Dark hair, features similar to Olivia's. The metadata on the photos confirms the date and location. Are you saying? I'm saying Nelson might have another daughter. One who looks enough like Olivia to be his sister. And based on the way they're interacting in the photos, Vanessa knew about her. The implications crashed over Dominic like a wave. If Nelson had another daughter, one who shared DNA with Olivia, it would strengthen his legal claim as a father capable of providing familial connection. And if Vanessa had known about this child for years while maintaining the fiction that Nelson was unaware of Olivia. Send me the photos, he instructed, and find out everything you can about this other child. Name, age, current location, everything. After ending the call, Dominic sat in stunned silence, reviewing what he knew. The Prague connection. Another child. Nelson's threat about leverage and his confidence despite the FBI investigation. The pieces were aligning into a picture he hadn't anticipated, one that complicated his clean narrative of protection and justice. If Nelson truly had another daughter, one who was Olivia's half-sister, The ethical landscape shifted. Would knowing about this sibling someday be important to Olivia? Would denying her that connection be its own form of cruelty? For the first time since discovering Vanessa's deception, Dominic faced uncertainty about his course of action. The ruthlessness that had driven his revenge against Nelson suddenly seemed disproportionate, complex. His phone chimed with Leo's file transfer, the Prague photos. He opened them, bracing himself for what they might reveal. The images showed Vanessa and Nelson in various tourist locations around Prague, the Charles Bridge, Old Town Square, Prague Castle. In several photos, they were accompanied by a young girl with dark curls strikingly similar to Olivia's. The resemblance was undeniable, the same heart-shaped face, the same direct gaze. In one particularly damning image, Vanessa knelt beside the child, helping her feed ducks in a park, her expression one of genuine affection. She had known. All this time, she had known Nelson had another daughter, Olivia's half-sister, and had kept it from everyone. Dominic closed the photos, mind racing with implications. Tomorrow's emergency hearing took on new significance. If Nelson presented these photos, established the existence of Olivia's sibling, argued that Dominic had been manipulating events to keep the sisters apart, no judge would look favorably on that, regardless of adoption papers or established parental relationships. He needed to talk to Vanessa immediately. But as he reached for his phone, another call came through, an unknown number. Against his better judgment, he answered. Frost. Nelson's voice, unnervingly calm. I assume by now you've seen the Prague photos. Dominic's jaw tightened. How did you? Your friend Leo isn't the only one with surveillance capabilities. Nelson interrupted smoothly. You've been 3 steps behind me from the beginning. What do you want, Nelson? Originally, just to know my daughter. To be part of her life in whatever capacity Vanessa thought appropriate. His tone hardened. But then you decided to destroy me. My gallery, my reputation, my freedom. So now what I want is simple. Withdraw the adoption, tell the FBI you fabricated the evidence against me, and stay out of my way while I build a relationship with both my daughters. Or tomorrow morning, I present evidence to the family court that you've been systematically alienating Olivia from her biological father and concealing the existence of her sister, emotional abuse that no judge will tolerate. That's not what happened, and you know it, Dominic ground out. Perception is reality in a courtroom, Nelson replied smoothly. By the time my lawyers finish painting the picture, you'll be lucky if you get supervised visitation. How do you think Olivia will feel when she learns her beloved father kept her from her own sister out of spite? The question struck Dominic where he was most vulnerable, his concern for Olivia's well-being. Would she someday resent him for these choices? Would the protection he believed he was providing turn to poison in her mind when she learned the full truth? I'll call off the FBI if you drop the custody claim, Dominic countered, stalling for time. We can work out reasonable visitation. Nelson laughed. Too late for half measures, Frost. I want it all, my life back, my reputation restored, and both my daughters acknowledging me as their father. You have until 9 tomorrow morning to decide. The call ended abruptly, leaving Dominic alone with impossible choices. Fight Nelson in court and risk exposing Olivia to painful truths and potential separation? Or surrender everything he'd built, allow Nelson's crimes to go unpunished, and step back from the child he considered his own? Neither option was acceptable, which meant he needed a third path, one that protected Olivia while neutralizing Nelson's leverage. He dialed Vanessa's number, determination hardening his resolve. Whatever had happened in Prague, whatever secrets still lay buried, it was time for complete honesty. For Olivia's sake, if nothing else. The game had changed, and so must his tactics. Chapter 7. The Prague Revelation. Vanessa opened her apartment door at 1:30 in the morning, hair tousled from sleep, eyes widening at the sight of Dominic standing in her hallway. She wore a silk robe hastily belted over pajamas, the same sleepwear habits he'd witnessed for 11 years of marriage. Dom? What's happening? Is Olivia? She's fine, he assured quickly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Leo's at the house with her. We need to talk. Vanessa closed the door, watching him warily. It's the middle of the night. Prague, he said simply, pulling out his phone and displaying the first photograph. Vanessa, Nelson, and the child on the Charles Bridge. Explain. The color drained from her face. For a moment, she seemed unable to speak, her gaze fixed on the image with a mixture of shock and resignation. How did you get those? She finally managed. Nelson has them. He's planning to use them in court tomorrow to prove I've been keeping Olivia from her half-sister. Dominic swiped to another photo, this one showing Vanessa alone with the girl, both smiling at the camera. Who is she, Van? Vanessa sank onto her couch, shoulders slumping in defeat. Her name is Sophie. She's Garrett's daughter with his ex-wife, Camille, and Olivia's half-sister. Yes. Her voice was barely audible. Biologically, Dominic remained standing, maintaining the psychological advantage of height. You knew about her. All this time. I only met her in Prague, Vanessa defended weakly. Garrett brought her to the art fair. Said it was the perfect opportunity to introduce us, since Camille thought he was taking Sophie on a father-daughter trip to Europe. And you never thought to mention this to me? That the man you were having an affair with had another daughter who shares DNA with Olivia? It wasn't an affair then, she insisted. Prague was complicated. Garrett and I reconnected professionally first. The gallery needed his connections to secure certain acquisitions. It was business. Until it wasn't. Dominic's voice was flat. Did you know he was Olivia's father when you went to Prague? Vanessa hesitated, then nodded. I've always known. From the beginning. The admission, though expected by now, still landed like a blow. And in Prague, you decided to introduce yourself to his other daughter. What? I was curious, she admitted. About her. About what Olivia might have been like if Garrett had been in her life from the start. Did Sophie know who you were? Garrett introduced me as a friend. She was only 5, too young to understand the complexities. Vanessa wrapped her arms around herself, a defensive posture. It was just 3 days, Dom. We visited tourist sites, ate ice cream, fed ducks in the park. Nothing sinister. And afterward, did you maintain contact with her? Not directly. Garrett would show me photos occasionally, tell me about her milestones. Her gaze dropped. She lives in Boston with her mother. That's where Garrett was before he moved here and opened his gallery. Dominic absorbed this information, fitting it into the larger puzzle. Does Camille know about Olivia? No. Garrett never told her. So he's been lying to everyone. Dominic's laugh was harsh. His ex-wife doesn't know he has another daughter. Olivia doesn't know she has a sister. I didn't know I wasn't her biological father. And you orchestrated it all. I was trying to protect everyone, Vanessa protested. Olivia, you, even Sophie. What good would it have done to upend all our lives with these truths? That wasn't your decision to make. Dominic paced the small living room, mind racing. Nelson called me tonight. He's using these photos as leverage, threatening to expose everything in court tomorrow unless I withdraw the adoption and clear him with the FBI. Vanessa's eyes widened. You can't do that. The adoption protects Olivia. I know that, he snapped. But if these photos come out, if a judge sees evidence that you and Nelson have been in contact for years, that there's another child involved who's been kept from Olivia, it would look like deliberate concealment. Vanessa finished, understanding dawning. Like I deprived Olivia of knowing her sister. Exactly. And judges don't look kindly on parents who manipulate family connections for their own convenience. They sat in heavy silence, the weight of years of deception pressing down on them. Finally, Vanessa spoke, her voice steadier than before. What are you going to do? Dominic studied her face. The woman he had loved, built a life with, shared a child with. Despite her betrayals, she was still Olivia's mother, still bound to him through the daughter they both cherished. I'm going to need your help, he said finally. Complete honesty, full cooperation. Can you give me that? She nodded without hesitation. For Olivia, anything. First, tell me everything about Sophie. Age, school, interests, everything you know. As Vanessa shared details about Sophie Barnes, 8 years old like Olivia, pianistically gifted, allergic to strawberries, obsessed with astronomy, Dominic recorded notes on his phone. The similarities between the half-sisters were striking, both artistic, both drawn to science, both excelling academically. Even their birthdays fell within weeks of each other. Does Camille know about the FBI investigation? He asked when Vanessa had finished. I don't think so. Garrett's been keeping it quiet, trying to resolve things before word spreads through the art community. And where is Sophie now? With her mother in Boston, as far as I know. Garrett usually visits once a month. She frowned. Why? What are you thinking? Dominic stood, a plan forming. I need to make some calls. Stay here, don't contact anyone, especially not Nelson. Dom. Vanessa caught his arm as he moved toward the door. Whatever you're planning, remember it affects both girls. Not just Olivia. The concern in her voice was genuine, a mother's worry extending even to a child not her own. It reminded him of the woman he'd fallen in love with years ago, before lies and secrets had corroded their foundation. I know, he assured her. That's precisely why I need to act quickly. 3 hours later, as pre-dawn light cast the city in shades of gray, Dominic sat in his parked car outside the federal courthouse, waiting. Leo had made the necessary arrangements, calling in favors from contacts in multiple agencies. Now everything hinged on timing and execution. His phone rang, Patricia's number. It's confirmed. His sister's voice was crisp, professional. Camille Barnes received the evidence packet an hour ago. According to my contact at Boston PD, she's incandescent with rage and already on a plane to New York with Sophie. ETA. Their flight lands at 8:15. My colleague will escort them directly to the courthouse for the 9 o'clock hearing. Dominic checked his watch, 5:45 a.m. And the judge? Judge Hernandez has been briefed on the sensitive nature of the case involving minors. She's agreed to a closed hearing with only essential parties present. Perfect. Dominic allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. And Nelson? Still unaware of Camille's involvement. He expects you to capitulate this morning, not counterattack. Let's keep it that way. He started his engine. I'm heading home to get Olivia ready. See you at the courthouse. The drive home was surreal. Streets gradually filling with early morning commuters, the city awakening to a day that would permanently alter the course of multiple lives. Dominic felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, not just for Olivia's future, but now for Sophie's as well. Leo met him at the door, Olivia already dressed in her favorite blue dress, the one she considered her special occasions outfit. She knows something's up, Leo murmured as they watched her pack her backpack with books and activities. But I kept it vague. Just said we're going to an important meeting. Thanks, brother. Dominic squeezed his friend's shoulder. For everything. Whatever happens today, I've got your six. Leo's expression was solemn. Always. Olivia approached, backpack secured. Are we ready, Dad? Almost, kiddo. Dominic knelt to her level. Listen, today is going to be different. We're going to meet some people and talk about some grown-up things. It might be confusing or even scary sometimes. Her dark eyes, so like his own, studied his face with precocious perception. Is it about you and Mom not being married anymore? Partly, he acknowledged. But it's also about family. People connected to us in ways we haven't talked about before. Like Grandma Dorothy saying I'm not real family. Her voice was small. No, sweetheart. He pulled her into a gentle embrace. You are my family, the most important person in my life. Nothing will ever change that. Today is about making sure everyone understands that. She seemed to accept this explanation, her trust in him still absolute despite the upheavals of recent weeks. That trust was a precious gift, one he was determined not to squander, regardless of the outcome of today's hearing. En route to the courthouse, he called Vanessa, who had spent the night implementing her part of the plan. Status. Documents delivered to Marshall an hour ago. Marshall Hayes was Dominic's attorney, a specialist in family law with a reputation for aggressive representation. He says everything is in order. The affidavit is particularly compelling. And you're prepared to testify? Yes. Her voice was steady, resolved. I'll tell the complete truth, Dom. About everything. Even if it damages your relationship with Nelson permanently. He used our daughter, both daughters, as pawns in his game. The steel in her tone reminded him of the Vanessa he'd first fallen for, principled, determined. I'll never forgive that. At the courthouse, Marshall met them at a side entrance, avoiding the media that had somehow gotten wind of a high-profile hearing involving the prominent art dealer. The attorney looked immaculate in a charcoal suit, his expression confident as he briefed Dominic on last-minute developments. Nelson's attorney filed additional motions this morning, emergency custody petitions, requests for immediate DNA testing, allegations of parental alienation. Marshall wasn't concerned. Standard desperation tactics. Judge Hernandez won't be swayed. And our counterfilings? All in place. Judge has the complete dossier. Vanessa's affidavit acknowledging the deception, evidence of Nelson's attempts at blackmail, and the documentation proving you've been Olivia's father in every way that matters for 8 years. Marshall checked his watch. The Boston flight landed 10 minutes ago. Camille and Sophie should be arriving shortly. Dominic nodded, turning to Olivia, who sat nearby, absorbed in a book. You okay, kiddo? She looked up, offering a small smile. Yeah. Uncle Leo said I might meet someone special today. The cryptic comment gave Dominic pause. Had Leo said too much? But before he could question further, Marshall touched his arm, gesturing toward the courtroom doors. Nelson just arrived. With his attorney, and Marshall paused, surprised. Dorothy Milligan. Dominic's jaw tightened. My former mother-in-law. Decided to choose sides, apparently. Not surprising, Marshall murmured. But potentially problematic. She could corroborate Nelson's claims about family connections being deliberately severed. Let her try. Dominic's voice was ice. I have contingencies for that scenario too. Inside the courtroom, tension hung heavy in the air as the various parties took their positions. Nelson sat with his attorney, a hawk-faced woman in an expensive suit, occasionally whispering strategy. Dorothy perched beside them, her posture rigid with disapproval as she spotted Dominic and Olivia. Vanessa arrived separately, taking a seat on Dominic's side of the courtroom, a visual cue to the judge about where her loyalties ultimately lay. The surprise on Nelson's face at this arrangement was evident, his confidence visibly faltering. At precisely 9 o'clock, Judge Elena Hernandez entered, her no-nonsense demeanor commanding immediate respect. Good morning. Given the sensitive nature of these proceedings involving minors, I've ordered a closed courtroom. We'll dispense with formalities and move directly to the matters at hand. Nelson's attorney rose first. Your Honor, we're seeking emergency relief regarding parental rights to a minor child, Olivia Frost. My client, Garrett Nelson, has evidence confirming he is the biological father and has been systematically prevented from establishing a relationship with his daughter. Judge Hernandez nodded. I've reviewed your filings, Counselor, and the counterpetition from Mr. Frost's team. She turned to Marshall. You're alleging extortion and witness tampering? Yes, Your Honor. Marshall stood. Mr. Nelson has attempted to leverage his biological connection to coerce my client into withdrawing legally filed adoption papers and interfering with a federal investigation. We have recorded evidence of these threats. The judge frowned. Serious allegations. Mr. Nelson, these actions, if proven, could constitute criminal conduct. Before Nelson could respond, the courtroom doors opened. A court officer entered, followed by Patricia, a stylish woman in her early 40s, and a young girl with familiar dark curls. Sophie. The resemblance to Olivia was striking, the same heart-shaped face, the same intelligent eyes. Olivia looked up from her book, curiosity blooming as she spotted the girl who could have been her mirror image. Your Honor. Patricia addressed the court professionally. Dr. Patricia Frost, licensed child psychologist. I'm here with Camille Barnes and her daughter Sophie Barnes, who have relevant testimony to these proceedings. Judge Hernandez raised an eyebrow. Approach, Dr. Frost. As Patricia explained the situation in hushed tones at the bench, Dominic watched Nelson's face transform from confusion to dawning horror. The art dealer half rose from his seat, gaze locked on Camille, whose expression could only be described as murderous. You have no right to bring my daughter into this. Nelson hissed across the courtroom. Camille stepped forward, ignoring protocol. No right. You've been living a double life for years, Garrett. Lying to me, to Sophie, to everyone. Order. Judge Hernandez called, though her expression suggested she understood the emotional nature of the revelation. Ms. Barnes, while I appreciate your distress, we must maintain decorum. Meanwhile, Sophie and Olivia had locked eyes across the room, each studying the other with the innocent curiosity of children discovering something wondrous and unexpected. Dad, Olivia whispered, tugging Dominic's sleeve. She looks like me. Yes, sweetheart, he replied gently. That's what we need to talk about today. Judge Hernandez reviewed the new documents Patricia had provided, her expression growing increasingly grave. In light of this new information, I'm ordering a 15-minute recess. Mr. Nelson, Mr. Frost, I expect both of you in my chambers immediately. Ms. Barnes and Dr. Frost as well. As the adults filed into the judge's chambers, Vanessa approached Olivia. Honey, why don't you and Sophie wait together with the court's child advocate? Maybe you two could get to know each other a little. Olivia glanced at Dominic for permission, receiving his nod before cautiously approaching Sophie. The two girls regarded each other with mirrored expressions of wonder. "I'm Olivia," his daughter said simply. "I'm Sophie," the other girl replied. "Are you my sister?" The directness of the question, so typical of children, echoed in the nearly empty courtroom. Dominic's heart twisted as he watched Olivia process this possibility. "I don't know," Olivia answered honestly. "Maybe? Would that be okay?" Sophie considered this with solemn deliberation before breaking into a smile. "I always wanted a sister." As the children were led away by the advocate, Dominic entered the judge's chambers, prepared for the confrontation that would determine all their futures. Inside, the atmosphere was charged with barely contained emotions. Judge Hernandez sat behind her desk, expression stern as she surveyed the assembled parties. "Let me be clear," she began. "I've been on the bench for 20 years, and I've rarely seen a more tangled web of deception and manipulation, all affecting innocent children." Her gaze swept over each adult in turn. "Mr. Nelson, you fathered a child, abandoned her mother during pregnancy, then concealed the existence of this child from your ex-wife, while simultaneously hiding your other daughter from Ms. Frost." Nelson attempted to interject, but the judge silenced him with a raised hand. "Ms. Frost, you perpetuated these deceptions, allowing Mr. Frost to believe he was Olivia's biological father for 8 years while maintaining secret contact with Mr. Nelson." She turned to Dominic. "And Mr. Frost, while your desire to protect your relationship with Olivia is understandable, your methods, leveraging federal investigations, surveillance, coercion, cross ethical, if not legal lines." The judge sighed deeply. "The only blameless parties here are the children, who deserve better than the adults in their lives have provided." "Your Honor," Dominic spoke carefully, "my sole concern has always been Olivia's well-being. Every action I've taken, including bringing Sophie and Ms. Barnes here today, was to ensure the truth was fully known before decisions affecting her future were made." "A convenient justification," Nelson snapped. "You orchestrated this ambush to destroy me. You were planning to use Sophie as leverage without her knowledge or her mother's consent," Dominic countered coldly. "At least I ensured all parties were informed before proceeding." Camille Barnes, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward. "Your Honor, until yesterday, I had no idea Garrett had another child. For 8 years, he's been playing father to Olivia while visiting Sophie once a month, pretending to be the devoted dad who simply lived in another city due to work." Her voice broke slightly. "Sophie adores him. This will devastate her." "That's precisely my point," Judge Hernandez responded. "These children are now aware of each other's existence. They cannot unlearn this truth, nor should they. Moving forward, we must prioritize their psychological well-being above all else." Patricia nodded. "As a child psychologist, I can confirm that abrupt severing of newly discovered family connections can be profoundly traumatic. Now that Olivia and Sophie know about each other, they should be allowed to develop a relationship at their own pace, with appropriate support." Judge Hernandez considered this assessment. "I'm inclined to agree, Dr. Frost. Which brings us to the central question. How do we proceed in a manner that serves the best interests of both children?" "Your Honor," Marshall interjected, "the adoption papers filed by my client establish him as Olivia's legal father, regardless of biological connection. Ms. Frost has testified in her affidavit that Mr. Frost has been Olivia's primary caregiver and consistent father figure throughout her life. While Mr. Nelson has been notably absent," Dominic added pointedly. Nelson's attorney bristled. "My client was deliberately kept in the dark about his paternity for years." "That's a lie," Vanessa interrupted, surprising everyone. "Garrett knew about my pregnancy from the beginning. He chose not to be involved. He explicitly told me he wasn't ready for fatherhood and suggested termination." The revelation hung heavy in the air. Judge Hernandez's expression hardened as she turned to Nelson. "Is this true, Mr. Nelson?" Nelson faltered under her direct gaze. "It was a complicated time. I was establishing my gallery, finalizing my divorce from Camille. I wasn't in a position to be a father," the judge finished for him. "Yet you maintained that role with Sophie while abandoning your responsibilities to Olivia." "I made mistakes," Nelson admitted, desperation creeping into his voice. "But I'm trying to rectify them now. I want to know my daughter." 8 years too late, Dominic stated flatly. Judge Hernandez held up her hand for silence. "I've heard enough. Here's what's going to happen. Mr. Frost's adoption of Olivia will stand. He has been her father in every meaningful sense of the word, and disrupting that relationship would cause unnecessary harm. Nelson began to protest, but the judge continued. However, given the newly established connection between Olivia and Sophie, I am ordering a structured visitation schedule allowing the sisters to develop their relationship, supervised initially by Dr. Frost. She turned to Dominic. Mr. Frost, this means you will need to facilitate Olivia's relationship with her half-sister, which may occasionally involve controlled contact with Mr. Nelson. Dominic nodded, accepting this compromise. I want what's best for Olivia. If having a relationship with her sister benefits her, I'll support it fully. As for you, Mr. Nelson, the judge's tone sharpened. This court takes a dim view of your manipulative tactics. You will comply with the visitation schedule exactly as written. Any attempt to use these visits to undermine Mr. Frost's relationship with Olivia will result in immediate suspension of your access privileges. She gathered her papers. We'll return to open court to formalize these decisions. And let me be absolutely clear. From this moment forward, both children's well-being comes before any adult's ego, desire for revenge, or personal agenda. Am I understood? The collective murmur of agreement seemed to satisfy her. As they filed out of the chambers, Dominic caught Nelson's eye. The art dealer's expression was a mixture of defeat and simmering rage. A man who had walked into court expecting triumph only to find his carefully constructed plans in ruins. Back in the courtroom, Olivia and Sophie sat together, heads bent over a shared book, already forming the beginnings of a connection that would likely shape both their lives. Seeing them together, the undeniable physical resemblance, the similar mannerisms, Dominic felt a momentary pang. They were sisters, bound by blood in a way he and Olivia were not. But as Olivia looked up and spotted him, her face brightening with the same trusting smile she'd given him every day for 8 years, he knew with absolute certainty. Some bonds ran deeper than DNA. Blood might make them family, but love and presence had made him her father. And nothing, not Nelson's schemes, not Dorothy's cruelty, not even Vanessa's betrayal, would ever change that essential truth. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. 1 month after the courthouse revelation, Dominic sat in his home office, reviewing reports from Leo's surveillance team. The legal battle had been settled, at least on paper. Olivia remained legally his daughter. She and Sophie had begun building a tentative relationship through carefully supervised visits. Nelson had been temporarily neutralized by the judge's strict orders and the ongoing FBI investigation. But Dominic knew better than to consider the matter closed. Men like Nelson didn't accept defeat quietly. They retreated, regrouped, and looked for new angles of attack. More intel on our art dealer friend? Leo asked, entering with 2 cups of coffee. Dominic accepted the mug with a nod. He's been meeting with Dorothy 3 times a week. Always at her house. Always when Thomas is at his golf club. Strange bedfellows, Leo observed, settling into the chair opposite the desk. Your mother-in-law and your daughter's biological father. Not so strange when you consider they both lost everything they wanted that day in court. Dominic sipped his coffee, expression cold. Dorothy wanted to preserve her perfect family image. Nelson wanted control of Olivia. They're finding common ground in their hatred of me. Think they're planning something? Without question. The question is what? A knock at the door interrupted their speculation. Vanessa stood in the doorway, dressed casually for the weekend visitation she now shared with Dominic. The divorce had been finalized 2 weeks earlier. A surprisingly amicable process once both parties accepted the marriage was irreparably broken. Sorry to interrupt, she said. Olivia's ready for our day out. She wanted to say goodbye before we left. As if summoned by her name, Olivia appeared beside her mother, backpack slung over one shoulder. Dad, Uncle Leo, guess what? Mom's taking me and Sophie to the Science Museum today. Dominic's eyebrows rose. Sophie's joining you? Vanessa nodded. Camille suggested it. The girls have been video chatting every night. They've become close. The development was unexpected but not unwelcome. Despite everything, Dominic couldn't deny that the sister relationship seemed positive for Olivia. She had been happier lately, excited about having a sibling who shared her interests and understood her in ways others couldn't. That sounds great, kiddo, he said, smiling at his daughter. Take lots of pictures, okay? I will. She bounced over to hug him. Then Leo? Sophie says she wants to be a paleontologist. I told her I'd help her identify all the dinosaur bones. After they left, Leo turned to Dominic. You're taking this sister thing better than I expected. What choice do I have? Dominic leaned back in his chair. Fighting it would only hurt Olivia. Besides, Sophie's not responsible for her father's actions. She's just a kid who discovered she has a sister. Speaking of her father, the FBI investigation hit another snag. Leo pulled out his tablet, swiping through document images. 3 key witnesses suddenly retracted their statements, including the artist who claimed Nelson fabricated the exhibition. Dominic's expression darkened. Let me guess, they were paid off. Or threatened. Either way, the case is weakening. Leo set down the tablet. Nelson's getting creative, using his network to insulate himself from consequences. Then we need to be more creative. Dominic stood, pacing to the window. The view of their backyard, with the swing set he'd built for Olivia's 5th birthday, strengthened his resolve. It's time to implement the final phase. Leo's eyebrows rose. You sure about this? Once we cross this line. Nelson crossed it first when he tried to take my daughter. Dominic turned back, his expression resolute. He's pulled strings to undermine the FBI investigation. He's conspiring with Dorothy. He's biding his time, waiting for the right moment to make another play for custody. And you're not going to give him that chance, Leo surmised. Exactly. Dominic returned to his desk, unlocking a drawer and removing a thick folder labeled contingency. Call our contact at Interpol. It's time they received an anonymous tip about certain artifacts in Nelson's private collection. Leo whistled low. The antiquities angle. That's playing hardball, brother. Nelson deals in more than contemporary art. He has a side business in archaeological items with questionable provenance. Dominic handed over several photographs showing ancient artifacts displayed in Nelson's upstate cabin. Items that disappeared from museums in conflict zones. The kind of trafficking that carries international penalties. This will destroy him completely, Leo observed. Not a warning, but a statement of fact. His reputation, his freedom, his relationship with both daughters. He gave me no choice. Dominic's voice was devoid of emotion. I offered him a reasonable compromise. Supervised visitation with Olivia. A chance to be part of her life in a limited capacity. He chose to continue fighting. And Dorothy? What's her role in all this? Dominic's smile was cold. She's about to learn why her husband's judicial misconduct was buried 15 years ago, and who really holds the documentation about it. Later that evening, as Dominic prepared dinner for himself in the quiet house, his phone rang, Thomas Milligan's number. He answered with cautious curiosity. Dominic. The former judge's voice was grave. We need to talk. In person. About Dorothy, Nelson, and whatever you're planning to do to them. A pause. I'm not as oblivious as my wife believes. They arranged to meet at a quiet bar downtown, neutral territory. When Dominic arrived, Thomas was already seated in a back booth, nursing a scotch that matched the one Dominic had sent to Nelson's gallery months earlier. I'll be direct, Thomas said after Dominic ordered his drink. I know Dorothy has been meeting with Nelson. I know they're plotting something involving Olivia. And I know you have evidence about my indiscretion from years ago. Dominic didn't confirm or deny. Why are we having this conversation, Thomas? The older man sighed heavily. Because despite my wife's manipulations and my own past failings, I care about my granddaughter. The real victim in all this has been Olivia. On that, we agree. Dorothy doesn't speak for me in this matter, Thomas continued. Her obsession with bloodlines and family legacy, it's poison. What she did to Olivia at that birthday dinner was unforgivable. Dominic studied his former father-in-law with renewed interest. Yet you said nothing at the time. A mistake I've regretted every day since. Thomas finished his scotch. I'm here to offer a proposal. Call off whatever you're planning for Nelson and Dorothy, and I'll ensure they cease their machinations against you. How? I still have influence with my wife, whatever she might think. And I have information about Nelson that would motivate his immediate and permanent retreat. Thomas leaned forward. He doesn't know that I was the judge who sealed the records on one of his early art fraud cases, before he established himself in this city. A youthful indiscretion, he called it then. Dominic's drink arrived. He took a measured sip, evaluating Thomas's offer. Why should I trust you? You've sided with Dorothy at every turn. Not this time. Thomas's expression was grim. I've spent my life upholding the law, however imperfectly. What Dorothy and Nelson are planning crosses lines I won't abide. Which is what exactly? Thomas hesitated, then revealed. They've hired a private investigator to dig into your military record, looking for incidents, trauma responses, anything that could be framed as making you potentially unsafe around Olivia. Cold rage washed through Dominic. Using his service against him, attempting to weaponize potential PTSD or combat experiences to paint him as unstable, was beyond contempt. Dorothy suggested it. Thomas continued, seeming to read Dominic's thoughts. Nelson's funding it. They believe if they can establish a pattern of concerning behavior, they can petition for modified custody on safety grounds. They won't find anything, Dominic stated flatly. His military record was exemplary. They don't need to find real evidence. Just enough to start a narrative, plant seeds of doubt. Thomas looked genuinely troubled. It's despicable, using a man's service to his country against him. Dominic considered his options. The Interpol tip was already in motion. Leo would have made the call hours ago. But Dorothy's involvement could still be addressed. I'll consider adjusting my plans, he said finally. On one condition. Name it. Dorothy leaves this city. Permanently. She relocates somewhere far from Olivia and makes no attempt at contact without my explicit permission. Thomas didn't seem surprised by the demand. She won't go willingly. Then make her. Dominic's voice hardened. Or I release everything I have. On Nelson, on your judicial misconduct, on her psychological manipulation of Olivia. All of it. The former judge studied him for a long moment, perhaps recognizing the same unyielding resolve he'd once seen in defendants who had nothing left to lose. I'll handle Dorothy, he said finally. Give me 48 hours. Dominic nodded once, standing to leave. 48 hours. Then I do things my way. As he walked to his car, Dominic's phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Girls had a great day. Dropping Olivia home in 30 minutes. Need to talk to you about something important. The cryptic message piqued his interest. Despite the divorce, he and Vanessa had maintained a cordial relationship focused on Olivia's well-being. They spoke regularly about schedules and their daughter's needs, but rarely about important matters. When they arrived, Olivia burst through the door first, chattering excitedly about the dinosaur exhibit and how she and Sophie had correctly identified 3 specimens the museum had mislabeled. Mom said we could be paleontologists together someday, she reported, eyes bright with enthusiasm. Sophie's really smart, Dad. Like, really smart. Just like you. He replied, smoothing her wild curls. Why don't you go unpack your backpack while I talk to Mom for a minute? Once Olivia was upstairs, Vanessa's demeanor shifted, tension evident in her posture. Garrett contacted Camille today. Wanted to take Sophie for an overnight visit to his cabin upstate. Dominic tensed. When? Tomorrow. Camille refused, said she wasn't comfortable with overnight visits yet. Vanessa hesitated. He was insistent, almost desperate. Said it might be his last chance to spend quality time with Sophie for a while. The implications were clear. Nelson had gotten wind of something, perhaps the Interpol investigation, perhaps another avenue of Dominic's multi-pronged attack. Did he mention why? No, but Camille said he seemed agitated. Mentioned tying up loose ends before some kind of trip. Vanessa's gaze was direct. Dom, what's happening? For a moment, he considered deflection, maintaining the information firewall he'd established during their separation. But Vanessa had proven her loyalty during the court hearing, choosing Olivia's well-being over Nelson's schemes. She deserved some measure of truth. Nelson's about to face consequences for choices he's made, he said carefully. Choices unrelated to Olivia or Sophie. Understanding dawned in her eyes. The FBI investigation. It's expanding. Something like that. He wouldn't burden her with specifics about the antiquities trafficking. What matters is keeping both girls safe from whatever desperate moves he might make. Vanessa nodded slowly. I'll warn Camille to be extra vigilant. No visits, no phone calls, nothing until we know more. Good. He walked her to the door. Thank you for telling me. She paused in the doorway, studying his face with the familiarity of someone who had once known him better than anyone. You're doing what needs to be done. I understand that now. The simple statement, free from judgment or condemnation, was perhaps the closest thing to absolution she could offer for the ruthless path he'd chosen. It was never about vengeance, he said quietly. Only protection. I know. She smiled sadly. That's what makes you a good father. After she left, Dominic checked on Olivia, finding her already in pajamas, arranging her collection of mineral specimens on her desk. Sophie has the same calcite formation, she reported, holding up a milky crystal. Isn't that cool? We have the same rocks. Very cool. He sat on the edge of her bed. You like having a sister, huh? Olivia's expression turned thoughtful. Yeah, it's like she understands stuff about me that no one else does. Even though we just met. She looked up, suddenly concerned. Is that okay? That I like her a lot. Of course it is, kiddo. He pulled her into a gentle hug. Family comes in all sorts of complicated arrangements. What matters is that you're happy. But you're still my dad, right? Like my real dad. The question pierced straight to his core. Always live. Nothing could ever change that. She nodded, satisfied. Good. Because Sophie's dad is kind of weird. He tries too hard, you know? Like he's acting in a movie about being a dad instead of just being one. The astute observation, so typical of his perceptive daughter, almost made him laugh despite the gravity of the situation. Some people find that stuff harder than others. You make it look easy, she declared, yawning as she climbed into bed. Night, Dad. Night, kiddo. He kissed her forehead. Sweet dreams. Downstairs, he found 3 missed calls from Leo and a text that simply read, "It's done. Interpol, moving tomorrow. Call me." Dominic poured himself a whiskey and stepped onto the back porch, gazing up at the night sky as he called his friend. Interpol coordinated with FBI art crimes, Leo reported without preamble. They're executing simultaneous raids on Nelson's gallery, apartment, and upstate cabin tomorrow at dawn. The evidence package was compelling. And there's no way to trace it back to us? None. I used 3 layers of cutouts and a secure server in a non-extradition country. Leo paused. Brother, this is endgame stuff. Nelson's looking at 15 to 20 years, if even half of what we sent checks out. It will check out, Dominic replied with certainty. I verified every piece personally. And you're at peace with that? With destroying him so completely? Dominic considered the question seriously. Was this justice or vengeance? Protection or punishment? The line had blurred months ago. He gave me no choice, he said finally. He tried to take my daughter, threatened my family, weaponized my military service against me. Men like Nelson don't stop until they're forced to stop. And Dorothy? Thomas is handling her. We'll see if he delivers. Dominic finished his whiskey. Either way, by this time tomorrow, Nelson will no longer be a threat to Olivia or Sophie. As he ended the call, Dominic reflected on the path that had led him here, from that devastating dinner at the Milligans to this moment of imminent triumph. He had fought with every weapon at his disposal, crossed lines he'd once believed immutable, all to protect what mattered most. Was it ruthless? Undoubtedly. But for Olivia, he would burn the world and feel no remorse for the flames. Chapter 9, Blood and Choice. Dawn broke clear and cold on the day that would reshape all their lives. Dominic sat at his kitchen table, nursing a coffee and watching the second hand sweep around his watch face. 6:15 a.m. By now, Interpol and FBI agents would be surrounding Nelson's properties, preparing to execute their warrants. His phone buzzed, a news alert. He opened it to find a breaking story about an ongoing law enforcement operation at the prestigious Nelson Gallery. The article mentioned alleged connections to international antiquities trafficking and cooperation between federal agencies and Interpol. It had begun. Olivia appeared in the doorway, still in pajamas, hair tousled from sleep. Dad, why are you up so early? Just some work stuff, kiddo, he replied, quickly closing the news app. Want pancakes? She nodded eagerly, climbing onto a stool at the counter to watch him prepare breakfast. These ordinary moments, making food for his daughter, listening to her chatter about school and friends, were what he'd fought so hard to preserve. The simple, profound joy of being her father. As they ate, his phone rang, Thomas Milligan's number. Morning check-in. Dominic answered casually, not wanting to alert Olivia to anything unusual. It's done, Thomas replied without preamble. Dorothy's agreed to relocate to our winter home in Arizona. Indefinitely. She's packing as we speak. Dominic raised an eyebrow, impressed despite himself. That was efficient. I made the consequences of refusal exceptionally clear. Thomas's voice was grim, and I showed her the news about Nelson. She understands her position is untenable. Good. Dominic glanced at Olivia, who was decorating her pancakes with elaborate patterns of syrup. We'll discuss details later. After hanging up, he received another call almost immediately. Vanessa, have you seen the news? She asked, voice tight with tension. Yes. Camille's called 3 times already. She's in shock. Vanessa lowered her voice. They're saying he could face international charges. That some of the artifacts were looted from war zones, connected to terrorist financing. Dominic had known the extent of Nelson's crimes, had documented them meticulously, but hearing them stated so plainly still gave him pause. How's Sophie taking it? She doesn't know yet. Camille's struggling with how to tell her. Vanessa paused. Dom, this is going to affect Olivia too. Once the connection becomes public. I know. I'm prepared for that conversation. He watched his daughter, innocent and happy in this moment of calm before the storm. I'll pick her up from school today, talk to her myself. Want me to be there? The offer was genuine, a co-parent concerned for their child's well-being. Maybe. Let me gauge her initial reaction first. He appreciated Vanessa's approach. Whatever had broken between them as husband and wife, their commitment to Olivia remained unshakable. As he drove Olivia to school, keeping the radio off to avoid news bulletins, his phone buzzed repeatedly with updates from Leo. Nelson had been taken into custody at his apartment. The gallery raid had uncovered documentation linking him to black market dealers in Syria and Libya. The cabin search had revealed hidden storage containing artifacts matching descriptions of items stolen from the Baghdad Museum during the Iraq War. It was more than enough to ensure Nelson would spend decades behind bars. After dropping Olivia off with an extra tight hug and a promise to pick her up that afternoon, Dominic drove to a quiet park on the outskirts of the city. He needed space to think, to process the culmination of months of planning and execution. Nelson was finished. Dorothy was being exiled. The immediate threats to his daughter had been neutralized completely. Yet instead of triumph, Dominic felt a curious hollowness. Not regret, exactly, but awareness of the weight of what he'd done. Lives altered irrevocably. Families fractured beyond repair. His phone rang again. Leo, with news he hadn't anticipated. Nelson tried to run, his friend reported. During transport from his apartment to the federal building. Assaulted an agent, got himself shot. Dominic sat straighter. Dead? No, but critical. Took one in the shoulder, another in the leg. They've got him in surgery now. The development complicated matters. If Nelson died, it would simplify some aspects of the situation. No trial, no possibility of reduced sentences or deals. But it would also devastate Sophie and potentially traumatize Olivia. Keep me posted on his condition, Dominic instructed. And increase surveillance on Dorothy. Make sure she actually gets on that plane to Arizona. After ending the call, he sat watching a group of children play on the park's swings and slides, their laughter carrying across the crisp morning air. Normal kids with normal lives, untouched by the kinds of adult machinations that had entangled Olivia and Sophie. His phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. News is everywhere. Nelson's name trending. You okay? He appreciated his sister's concern, but wasn't sure how to answer. Was he okay? He had protected what mattered most. Ensured his daughter's safety and security. But the cost had been steep, and not just for his enemies. Mission accomplished, he replied simply. Talk later. By afternoon, when Dominic arrived at Olivia's school, he found the administration already dealing with the first ripples of the scandal. The principal, Dr. Wexler, pulled him aside as he signed Olivia out. Mr. Frost, we've been fielding calls from reporters, she informed him quietly. Apparently someone made the connection between Olivia and Mr. Nelson. Dominic's jaw tightened. How's she doing? She doesn't know yet. We've kept the children away from any news or outside information. Dr. Wexler's expression was sympathetic. But social media moves quickly. By tomorrow, many parents will have seen the stories. I understand. I'll be talking to her today. When Olivia emerged from her classroom, her expression was puzzling, not upset or confused, but thoughtful, almost solemn. Everything okay, kiddo? He asked as they walked to the car. Chloe's mom came to get her early, she reported. She was looking at me weird. And Ms. Patterson kept checking her phone and then looking at me too. Perceptive as always. Dominic helped her into the car, mind racing as he formulated the right approach for the difficult conversation ahead. Dad? She asked as they pulled away from the school. Are we going home? Not right away. I thought we might go to the lake first. The one with the ducks you like. She nodded, seeming to understand that whatever was coming required a special setting. They drove in comfortable silence, Olivia gazing out the window at the passing landscape, while Dominic rehearsed explanations in his mind. At the lake, they found a secluded bench overlooking the water. A few ducks paddled hopefully toward them, then lost interest when no bread appeared. The autumn light cast long shadows across the grass, the afternoon waning toward evening. Something happened today, Dominic began carefully. Something that affects Sophie's dad. And because he's connected to you through Sophie, it might affect you too. Olivia considered this. Is he in trouble? Yes. Serious trouble. Dominic chose his words. The police found out he was doing some bad things, illegal things, and they arrested him. Her eyes widened. Like in those cop shows Uncle Leo watches? Something like that. He managed a small smile at the comparison. The problem is, because he's Sophie's dad, and Sophie is your sister, some people might talk about it. Ask questions. Say things that might be confusing or upsetting. About me? The worry in her voice tore at him. Maybe, but I want you to remember something very important. He turned to face her fully. None of this is your fault. None of this changes who you are or how much I love you. And none of this changes the fact that I'm your dad, no matter what anyone says. Olivia absorbed this, her young mind processing implications beyond her years. Will Sophie be okay? She loves her dad a lot. The question, focused on her sister's well-being rather than her own potential embarrassment, reflected the compassion that made Dominic fiercely proud of his daughter. Sophie will need extra support right now, he acknowledged. From her mom, from you, from all of us who care about her. It's going to be hard for her. Olivia nodded decisively. I'll help her. That's what sisters do, right? Right. He pulled her into a hug, marveling at her resilience and kindness. That's exactly what sisters do. As they sat watching the ducks, Olivia asked questions. Some he could answer truthfully, others he had to simplify or defer. But throughout, she demonstrated a maturity that reaffirmed his conviction that every difficult choice, every morally ambiguous action, had been justified in service of protecting her. His phone buzzed, Camille Barnes calling. He stepped a few feet away to answer. Mr. Frost. Her voice was tightly controlled. I think you know why I'm calling. Nelson's condition? He guessed. He's out of surgery. Expected to recover. A pause. And I know what you did. Dominic tensed. Excuse me. The timing. The specificity of the evidence. The fact that it all happened immediately after he tried to gain custody of Olivia. Her tone was knowing, but not accusatory. I'm not judging you. In your position, I might have done the same. I'm not sure what you're implying, Ms. Barnes. Let's not play games. We both know Garrett was involved in questionable dealings. The difference is, I looked the other way because it was easier. You used it to protect your daughter. Another pause. Our daughters. The correction was meaningful, an acknowledgement of their shared concern for both girls' well-being. What do you want, Ms. Barnes? To thank you, she replied, surprising him, and to suggest we coordinate how we handle this with the girls. Sophie's devastated, confused. She'll need her sister more than ever. They arranged for the girls to meet the following weekend, with Patricia present to provide professional support for their emotional needs. After ending the call, Dominic returned to Olivia, who was tossing small pebbles into the water. Was that about Sophie? She asked, demonstrating again her intuitive understanding of adult dynamics. Yes, you'll see her this weekend. He sat beside her. How are you feeling about everything I told you? She considered the question seriously. Sad for Sophie. Worried people will say mean things. She looked up at him. But okay, I think. Because you're still my dad, and that's what matters most. The simple statement encapsulated everything he'd fought for. The security of knowing her place in the world, in his heart, was unshakable regardless of biology or scandal. Always, he assured her. Nothing will ever change that. 6 months later, spring brought new beginnings. Nelson had survived his injuries only to face multiple federal indictments and international charges. After attempting to bargain with prosecutors by offering information on other traffickers, he had been sentenced to 17 years in federal prison, effectively removing him from both Olivia and Sophie's childhood years. Dorothy remained in Arizona, her exile enforced by Thomas's unwavering commitment to their agreement with Dominic. She sent occasional cards and gifts to Olivia, carefully vetted by Dominic before being passed along, but made no attempt to visit or directly contact her granddaughter. Vanessa had settled into her new life, dating occasionally, but focusing primarily on her career and co-parenting relationship with Dominic. They had found an equilibrium based on mutual respect and shared concern for Olivia's well-being, not friendship, exactly, but a functional partnership centered on their daughter. The girls had grown remarkably close, their sisterly bond transcending the adult complications that had brought them together. They spent alternating weekends together, hosted by either Dominic or Camille, building memories untainted by their father's crimes or their mother's past choices. On a warm Saturday afternoon, Dominic sat on his back porch watching Olivia and Sophie conduct what they solemnly termed a scientific excavation in a corner of the garden he'd designated for their archaeological experiments. Their dark heads bent together in concentration. They carefully brushed dirt from objects they'd buried themselves the previous week, documenting their discoveries with meticulous notes and drawings. Leo joined him, handing over a cold beer as he settled into an adjacent chair. They're quite the team. Scary smart, both of them, Dominic agreed. Patricia says their bond is exceptionally strong for siblings who met so late. Says it's like they're making up for lost time. Nature finding a way. Leo took a swig of his beer. Heard from Nelson recently? His quarterly letter arrived yesterday. Same as the others. Pleas for forgiveness, claims of rehabilitation, requests for photos and updates about the girls. Dominic's expression hardened. Same place they all go? The shredder. No second chances. Even after all this time. Not for him. Not ever. Dominic watched his daughter laugh with her sister, the sound pure and unburdened. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. Leo studied his friend's profile. And Vanessa? You've managed a decent relationship there. For Olivia's sake, Dominic clarified. I'll never trust her again, but I don't need to destroy her to protect my daughter. She made her choice when she signed those adoption papers, chose Olivia's well-being over Nelson's demands. Redemption through action, Leo mused, while Nelson just offers words on paper. Exactly. Dominic raised his bottle in a mock toast. To consequences. May they always find those who deserve them. As evening approached, Camille arrived to collect Sophie for dinner. The girls hugged goodbye with dramatic promises to video chat before bedtime, already planning their next weekend adventure. Watching them together, Dominic reflected on the strange, twisted path that had brought them to this point. Deception uncovered, revenge executed, justice served in its coldest form. Had it been worth it? The question remained complex, layered with moral ambiguities and potential future repercussions. But when Olivia ran to him after Sophie's departure, throwing her arms around his waist with complete trust and love, the answer seemed clear enough. Dad, she announced, face smudged with garden dirt. Sophie and I decided we're going to be archaeologists and paleontologists. Is that allowed? Absolutely. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. You can be anything you want to be, kiddo. Cool. She beamed up at him. Can we have pizza for dinner? I'm starving from all that scientific research. Science does build an appetite. He agreed solemnly, leading her inside with an arm around her shoulders. Behind them, the garden lay quiet in the fading light. A simple backyard transformed by children's imagination into a field of discovery and possibility. Much like the family they had become, shaped not by blood but by choice, by love, by the fierce determination to protect what mattered most. Dorothy had been wrong that night at dinner. Blood wasn't what made family. It never had been. Family was made in moments like these, ordinary, precious, irreplaceable. And Dominic would never regret the ruthless path he'd walked to preserve them. In the end, that was the only verdict that mattered. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.